And that Garyana, and as there may be others that trickle in or that are join us on Zoom. So we'll go ahead and get started and call the meeting into order. So good morning and thank you all for coming to our Policy and Budget Standing Committee of CAB. I first want to thank you all in the room and those that are on Zoom for coming in today for our special work group meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that we are here to discuss the AB 109 Access Funds. The Policy and Budget Subcommittee are very thankful to have all here today and presenting your information. Hi. Hi. I'm very thankful for you all to come today. Coming out of the office and spending this time with us. We are here to share information regarding your services related to the just and impacted population. The information you provide today, it will assist us as a committee in making recommendations on how to facilitate this funding to the CCP. So again, we welcome and thank everyone for joining us today. So I first want to lay some ground rules and expectations for today's meeting by setting the table for our board members and for those in the audience. Again, we have a very tight schedule and an outline of today's schedule and timing for each provider was sent out ahead of time, so you are aware of how much time you each have. Turn this way too. I ask that we be respectful of time and stick with the allocated time provided for each provider and Q&A questions. All questions and comments will be held at the allotted time slot, and Q&A questions will first be done by the committee members and then those in the audience who wish to ask a question. So some quick housekeeping items we will follow for those in the room and on Zoom on how to provide public comment. Again, in the room, the committee members will respond first, and for those, I'll look around that may have questions. For those in the public, please keep your participation on mute. For those on the phone, use *6 to unmute, and we'll hear comments first from the board members as stated, and from the public by raising your hand. I'll now go over a small part of our purpose in our as a committee, which is to assist the CAB in making policy and budget recommendations to advance effective use of the AB 109 funds and distributions. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get to work. We first have some committee items that we need to go over, and then we'll dive right into our presentations. So let's go ahead and start off with welcome, introductions, and announcements. My name is Nicole Green. I am the chair of, thank you for pulling that up. I am the chair for the policy and budget, and I'll go ahead and turn over to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, Justin Van Zerber, Vice Chair, West County.
Jeffrey Robinson, Committee Member, Central County.
I was about to grab a Tylenol. Thank you for the committee members. I will now move over to staff for introductions.
Patrice Guillory here from Office of Reentry and Justice.
Hello, Garyana Youngblood, also here from the ORJ, Office of Reentry and Justice.
Good morning, Michelle Elizondo, also Office of Reentry and Justice. Good to be here.
Thank you very much. We'll then allow for introductions first for those in the room, so we can start over to your right.
Rachel Rose.
Thank you.
Detention Health.
Thank you.
Frank Hancock with Men and Women of Purpose. Ivy Mitchell, Men and Women of Purpose.
Rappel Stroud, Office of Education, Contra Costa Adult School.
Jana Evans, Office of Education, Contra Costa Adults.
Cynthia Chase, the General Project. Audrey Carter, Chair.
I apologize, I can't throw you out of order, Chair. I apologize for that. Thank you all for your introductions.
Anyone on Zoom?
And let's go ahead and move on Zoom for introductions, please.
I'm Jill Ray with the Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson, and at some point in time, I'll be transitioning to the car and then to in-person today.
Thank you. Anybody else on Zoom would like to introduce themselves?
Susan Woodhouse, Public Defender's Office.
Welcome. Go ahead.
I'm Dr. Sonia Sutherland from Detention.
Thank you. Welcome. Anyone else on Zoom? Any hands? Seeing none. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move right along to announcements. We do have one announcement on our agenda, which is the federal government funding opportunities.
Yeah, this is from me. Just wanted to highlight this as an opportunity that came across my desk. It's in alignment with what we are working towards in addressing access to resources before someone is released from custody, and then supporting them with employment opportunities as they transition out. I posed some questions that we then shared with the Workforce Development Board on kind of the process around opportunities at the federal and state level and how our CBOs can get connected to them and partner with the Workforce Development Board. So I think we're awaiting responses from them and hopefully can incorporate that into our work in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, I look forward to the responses. Any other announcements from committee members and or staff?
Yes, I have two announcements. One is that ORJ just released the findings of our needs assessment for our restorative justice initiative. So if you were on our email list, you should have received that this Monday. If not, me later or reach out to me. My contact is on the agenda, and I'll make sure you get a copy of that. So with that, we're asking community members to review the report. I know it's quite dense, but there's also an executive summary that helps. But we are hosting then a community workshop to receive feedback and reactions to the report's findings and recommendations. And that will be here in this room on April 15th from 2 to 4. There will be a virtual option, so folks are able to attend virtually as opposed to here in person. We ask that you please RSVP in advance so that way, and identify whether you'll be here in person or be joining by Zoom, and then we'll get you the Zoom link in advance of the meeting. The other announcement I have, I've placed some flyers in the back with folks in the room, but our partners over at County Health Services Public Health Division is hosting a community listening session in Antioch on March 25th, I believe. I'll get the date right, from 5 to 7. This is in reference to their gun violence prevention work. I attended their first listening session last Tuesday. It was really well done, and the facilitators come from I believe bridge builders of the new generation. They're a really great group that has been doing work with young people out in East County, and we have one of our Youth Promise grantees. So they're hosting this listening session specifically for parents of school-age youth. So if any of you know or work with families that are caring for young children or children under 18 that are living out in East County and specifically in Antioch, please encourage you to share that information with. There will be a series of other community listening sessions in different communities over the course of time. Just wanted to highlight that.
Is there any other announcements from committee or staff?
Oh, I forgot to say, there's some walnut bars in the back if anyone gets hungry throughout. Thank you to my wife for making them. They're delicious. And some oranges.
Sneak out one for me. All right, any announcements from anyone else in the room? Any other additional announcements on Zoom? I can't see the whole thing, so. Nope. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment on any items under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on this agenda. Seeing none in the room, are there any on Zoom? And I can't see if there's any or not. So I'm assuming there's no. Okay.
No, there's no hands raised.
Okay. So no public comment. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes from our February 16th CAB Policy and Budget Subcommittee meeting, which is on the attached agenda, page 4. Go ahead to move to page 4. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to review, and I will be looking for a motion to approve in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. So do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have Justin for a motion and Jeffrey for a second. Garyana, can you do the vote?
Yes, I'm gonna do a roll call vote since the subcommittee's so small. Nicole Green,
Aye.
Justin Van Zerber,
Aye.
Jeffrey Robinson. Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, now that we have completed our committee items, we'll move on to our presentations. So we first want to start off with a discussion for our pre and post release enhancement priority areas. We have received information from the Sheriff's Office and 2 of our providers and community to present. All the information is within the agenda. Unfortunately, the Sheriff's Office could not be here to present, and we'll tackle that when we get to that particular item. However, we will hear from 3 presenters today. And just to recap again, I'm going to always say this, we have a tight schedule, so please hold any questions and comments for that section of the item. We're going to go to the attachment 2 and start at page 7. Our first presentation will be by Rachel Rosekind for the Guaranteed Income Pilot. I would like to thank you for coming today and providing such robust information. I really appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and turn it over for you to present.
We've been looking at my computer a lot for kind of person.
Sorry to
So-
interrupt, but it's really hard to hear Rachel talk. And
Uh-oh, we want to move.
I can hear you super great, but not the side tables.
So we want to move this?
Closer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Come on over.
Come on over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to get on. Now I got my back. Okay. So again, same person, different space. My name is Rachel Rosekind, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about Guaranteed Income's intuitive, unique, and evidence-based approach to securing dignity, empowerment, economic stability, and hope for Contra Costa's justice-impacted population. I am going to ask, since the Sheriff's Office isn't here, and I feel like I have a tremendous amount of ground to cover, if I could just have some extra time in the presentation portion of my presentation, my time allotment. Would that be okay?
Yes.
And I also want to say, because I'm the only person who's presented to the CAB who's not connected to the county department or a community-based organization, I thought I should share a little bit about why I'm here, as it also serves kind of as an experiential basis for my recommendation pilot. So I've been a teacher, colleague, arts mentor, and resource provider for justice-impacted youth, adults, and families for many years. Also, when I was 10, my parents opened their home to a classmate whose mom was sentenced to state prison. And I saw firsthand then as now how incarceration creates family separation, social isolation, and enduring barriers to individual success and prosperity. I also serve on different coalitions and collectives alongside justice-impacted people working to uplift the needs, voices, legislative advocacy, and artistic expressions of people currently and formerly inside. And just to say, these are issues of deep intimacy and importance to me. People exiting jails and prisons are well aware of the intersecting and overwhelming obstacles they face. As one Guaranteed Income Pilot participant put it, I don't know what was scarier, going into prison or coming out. They're searching often desperately for avenues, resources, and opportunities that will help them get out and stay out. But too often, the re-entry population is treated as a monolith. And on the one hand, based on the pervasive and uniform barriers imposed on them, you'd think they were. Yet, like all other groups with a base of shared experience, they are also distinct individuals with differing and specific needs, circumstances, histories, and aspirations. While tracking populations can help us discern patterns across time and space, it's story that stitches those patterns together, the texture of every day that shapes lived experience. Guaranteed Income, or GI for short, operates from a dual lens that sees individuals as emboldened and unique agents, while also understanding that systemic and structural forces intersect to produce shared circumstances and constraints. It attempts to confront and correct the lack of differentiation imposed on vulnerable populations by paternalistic systems that provide conditional public benefits, infringe on people's privacy and regulate their behaviors. But GI does not overwrite the uniformity of obstacles they face. It honors and uplifts the strengths, desires, and self-determination of each member of those populations by bestowing trust and promoting agency. Pilot participants repeatedly attest to the power of cash as care. As one Arlington's Guarantee pilot participant stated, guaranteed income made me feel that I exist in the community. So, what is guaranteed income? Guaranteed income consists of unconditional, unrestricted cash payments distributed to a defined population for a set period of time. Payments typically range from $300 to $1,800 a month and can span anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. There are no work requirements, and participants can use the payments to spend on anything they like. They can purchase items and opportunities that they themselves believe are worth the investment. Participant populations have included pregnant Black women and mothers, youth aging out of the foster system, unhoused families, unhoused high school seniors, formerly incarcerated individuals, victims of human trafficking, police violence, and intimate partner violence, at-risk youth, and economically marginalized populations, including undocumented individuals and gig workers. But guaranteed income is not just about putting money in people's pockets, and it is definitely about putting money in people's pockets. It's about changing the stories we tell and the sources we cite and the values we uphold. America is one of the wealthiest nations, yet has more poverty than any other advanced democracy. 1 in 9 Americans lives just below the poverty line, and 38 million people cannot afford basic necessities. Despite America's 26 trillion GDP in 2022, its poverty level hasn't significantly budged since 1970. Why? In a country so affluent, does poverty persist? Why do we prioritize subsidizing affluence over alleviating poverty and tolerate without direct remedy the high levels of resource hoarding that have created neighborhoods with concentrated opportunity alongside those of intentional divestment and disrepair? Contra Costa mirrors those same trends. Although we have a relatively lower poverty rate and higher median income compared to other Bay Area counties, these statistics mask pervasive disparities and ongoing struggles. Data show that our BIPOC residents are disproportionately impacted by various systems and health, income, wealth, educational, housing, and resource disparities. As a member of our county-wide Guaranteed Income Working Group, I heard this directly and repeatedly from hundreds of community members who attended our public forums and focus groups last year. We talk so much about the violence that poverty incites, but not enough about the violence it inflicts. Poverty is a form of violence. The movement for guaranteed income acknowledges poverty as a failing of our systems, not our people. It recognizes poverty as a pervasive agent of harm that manifests across generations and goes beyond material deprivation to diminish and deny human potentials. It is a path to uplift voices and choices. In their advocacy for a pilot for justice-impacted individuals, Santa Clara County Supervisors Ellenberg and Chavez, and that pilot was funded, noted people make better choices when they have better options. Indeed. A guaranteed income can help people find long-term employment and further their education, reduce stress and anxiety and improve mental and physical health, energy and emotional well-being, reduce household income volatility and improve financial resilience by helping people pay off debt and save enough money to cover an emergency, increase the amount of quality time parents are able to spend with their children or contribute to their communities, improve people's personal relationships and self-worth. And I want to note that all of these cans have surfaced as dids based on evidence collected from dozens of pilots documented on a dashboard available, accessible online that is powered by Stanford's Basic Income Lab, and the Center for Guaranteed Income Research at the University of Pennsylvania. So everything I'm saying is findable there, as well as in the numerous reports that have come out that have documented these pilots. I also want to flag that the mayor-led pilot in Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, found that pilot participants found full-time employment at more than twice the rate of non-participants. So between 2019 and the present, there have actually been over 150 pilots launched nationwide. And these were initially mainly funded by private investment, but they are now more and more fueled by public investment. As I mentioned, Santa Clara has drawn on multiple public funding streams. They actually have 4 different pilots going at the moment, the most recent of which is for justice involved individuals, but they also have 3 others. They've used general fund dollars, American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and $1 million of AB 109 to fund for justice involved pilot. While pilot design, population, and implementation varies considerably, it's worth noting that pilot intent and participant demographics, economic context, and spending data, as well as outcomes, hold fairly constant, centering the undeniable nexus of racial, economic, and social disadvantage that defines access to financial security, housing stability, social protections, and other avenues and resources for health and well-being in this country. And the graphics included in the agenda packet kind of give you a sense of those patterns. Guaranteed income upends the economy of exploitation that profits off people's deprivation and pain. There's decades of research, which you all are well familiar with, I'm sure, that tells us what happens when people are mired in poverty. 15 times more likely to be incarcerated, health outcomes that are far more lethal and cost far more money. So in some senses, how much does this cost is the wrong question, because we are already paying so much. And in fact, one pilot documented public sector savings. In 2018, Canadian researchers gave $7,500 to 50 unhoused people and found they were able to secure stable housing faster than those who didn't receive the cash, saving the shelter system $8,100 per individual over the course of the year, or $405,000 over the course of that 1 year. Which says in this landscape, the cost of lost or missed opportunity far outweighs the cost of actually providing it. So if guaranteed income broadly responds to the fierce urgency of now, as Martin Luther King Jr. puts it, for people returning to community after incarceration, that fierceness and urgency is multiplied tenfold. Staggering cost of living, coupled with lack of sufficient resources, proactive opportunities, and protective measures, makes the reentry process part of a larger system of inherent and ongoing disadvantage that impedes individual success and health, safety, and well-being of communities. Achieving effective reentry with dignity and reintegration with support requires a holistic and strategic approach, with economic assistance and stabilization as a key lever and metric. And I want to flag that there is a group specifically called, which I'm a member of, called the Coalition for Reentry Cash, that is advocating across the country for guaranteed income pilots, as well as other legislative innovations like increased gate money, because our gate money hasn't budged for decades, and things like that to support reentry with direct cash. There are less than a dozen pilots actually that have focused on justice-involved populations, but their impact has been tremendous on individual circumstances and stories. And I've actually heard directly from many of those participants and in shared spaces with them, as well as read the reports that have come out. One pilot participant says, although it only lasted 12 months, it provided stepping stones for success. It gave us hope, and hope goes a long way for people who are accustomed to hopelessness. How am I doing on time? I'm like, I don't want to take too super advantage of it. I still have some more. Am I okay to keep going? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going. A pilot for justice impacted individuals can promote individual and family stability and stem the generational trauma and collateral consequences of poverty and incarceration. Provide returning community members with room to breathe, space to dream, and a chance for success. disrupt the revolving door of systems involvement, evidenced by the overlap between justice involvement, economic insecurity, and homelessness. 2 examples. In 2022 in Alachua County, Florida, where there is a pilot that's actually in its second iteration, its second cohort for justice involved populations. In 2022, 23% of probation violations were due to lack of money. In the 2022 PIC count, point in time count, that the city of San Francisco conducted, they found that 23%, when asked about justice involvement, reported that they had spent at least one night in jail or prison over the course of the last year. And I want to flag that I cite San Francisco because our Contra Costa County does not ask that question in its PIC count. So I don't have that data, but they do in San Francisco. So
What was that again?
23% reported in the city of San Francisco PIC count. And then the kind of more global look, if you look over the past decade, the cost of imprisoning one person in California has increased by more than 90%, reaching a record-breaking $132,860 annually, one person. And those are state finance documents. I did request operational expenses from our county sheriff's office, but I was not provided with them. So I will use Santa Clara County as an analog since they publicize their operating costs to justify their pilot. So their costs range from $300 to $679 per day per individual, depending on facility. So in contrast, their programs cost $1,000 per individual per month, the pilot programs. Pilot budgets vary considerably, as I explained. There's multiple factors that go into them. How many people are provided with funding, for how long, what kind of evaluation is going to be done, which ranges from hundreds of thousands for a place like the Center for Guaranteed Income Research to maybe less if you're not doing a randomized controlled trial. So there's not a kind of one way to do it, not a one size fits all. And most of them are, or all of them are designed in response to local contexts and local needs. But when determining how far a budget should go, the lion's share really should fall into people's pockets rather than administrative costs. And I did want to flag that my recommendation for $1 million in the packet, it was drawn from 2 sources, one of which is it aligns exactly what the amount of AB 109 funds that Santa Clara County is drawing down for their pilot, which again is only partially funding that pilot. They're using other public funds as well. But I also looked at the Arlington's Guarantee pilot, which had a subset of justice impacted individuals served. And they their overall investment was $2 million. $1.8 million of that went directly into cash disbursement, and about $200,000 was administrative costs. So program facilitation, evaluation, et cetera. And that pilot, just to give you a sense, provided 200 households with $500 a month for 18 months. So getting to the end here. Guaranteed income rewrites surface scripts, deep narratives, and operating instructions about deservedness, dignity, trust, and allocation of public dollars and resources. It provides a model for centering directly impacted community members in policy interventions and solutions, and if purposely designed, can attend not just to gaps, but overlaps, not just to those who are underserved, but those who are overserved across our systems. People re-entering the community have served their time, so the question is, why do we keep punishing them? We train our eye on divesting from punishment and investing in justice. We architect new pathways of affirmation and opportunity. Guaranteed Income Pilot aligns with AB 109's intent to promote justice reinvestment. The CAB's desire to allocate reserves to fund data-driven, research-based, and innovative initiatives that cut across silos and address service gaps and unmet needs, and our county's increasing turn toward equity-focused goals and metrics. But most of all, it aligns with a fundamental belief in human dignity, trust, responsibility, and possibility. If you elect to recommend and fund this pilot, its design should emerge from community-focused, transparent, and inclusive process that meaningfully and accountably engages impacted residents and families. We must lift up and listen to the voices of people who are the experts on our broken systems and know best how to recreate them. And I just want to note that Mountain View, the city of Mountain View, funded a lived experience panel to help design their, provide input on designing their pilot. Our community partners and justice impacted residents need to be at the center of this effort to build it with care and credibility if it moves forward. And I certainly hope it will. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your graciousness.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
My water.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for presenting a summary of the information that you presented within the agenda. So I now want to turn it over to committee members first for any questions that they may have. So I'll go ahead and start to go around the table.
Yeah, I have a few. First, thank you for being here. Thank you for compiling all this information. And thank you for advocating in a space that I don't think a lot of people are. We've heard your voice several times presented in CAB and just reflecting and appreciate it. I align with some type of engagement in basic income or guaranteed income as you're using here. I just want to lift up a phrase in here. It says, because GI funds may affect a person's social safety net benefits and the payments are notably not intended to replace other supports, many pilots include counseling, help participants, et cetera, et cetera. I think I'm raising this up as it's intended to be used alongside many of the other interventions that we are discussing. And it's not to replace anything, it's to add additional value. I think the question that I'm tossing around in my head is kind of the prioritization of a population within AB 109 to target. You referenced a lot of research of different populations that different groups have targeted. But I think hearing from you a little bit more guidance on if there were 50 people selected, how would we go about selecting those people? Is it important to focus on K with the intent that it reduces the likelihood of incarceration on a longer period of time, et cetera, or prioritizing other subsets within the AB 109 population?
So I'll say a few things to that. The first would be that argument that you just made for focusing on TAPE populations has been one of the reasons that has been a focus for many of the pilots. But I would also say that I mean 100% what I say in terms of the people who are most impacted and close, formerly incarcerated and justice impacted families, and local level data being the ones who kind of need to get together to see what would be most impactful. Because there is so much fluctuation in design and how even within the small subset of whether, I think it's between 10 and 12 pilots that have been run for justice involved individuals, there are so many different ways that they're pulling records to look at, do we look at people who were released within the past 6 months, or do we use 3 years as a window to look at? And when the funding comes in, that's the time when they're looking at all of these different things, because there are so many different moving parts. It's hard to kind of on the front end know what you want to do, and there is a learning curve and a learning process. So the important thing is to draw in your community partners and the county, the county departments that are involved in the justice system, to understand what the landscape of need is. And that kind of, allows you to hone in on who would be best served by such a pilot. Because, and I'm not trying to duck your question, but it's like, there is no single kind of encompassing rule to it. It's very much, and one of the things I've learned in being in different communities of practice, of which there are several, one of which is Bay Area specific, in the guaranteed income universe, is that everyone is sharing what they're learning, because this is a new, guaranteed income actually has been around for decades. And I've been studying it for decades, but this new wave is really new. 2019 kind of Mayor Tubbs in Stockton really kicked it off. So that's what, 4 years, 5 years, depending on how you do the math. And the findings are just coming in too, right? Because after the pilots run, then it takes a while to produce the reports and look at the evaluations. And some of them are running second rounds and second cohorts. But in these communities of practice spaces that we sit in, people talk very bluntly. Okay, we use this, for example, way to get cash to participants. We used a prepaid debit card, but we found that was a barrier. So now we're going to use a different payment method. next round. It's very iterative and it's very fluid and it builds upon what people are, seeing as maybe errors that they made in the past and successes moving forward. And they're listening to participants, voices, the people who have been in these pilots to guide their design and their evaluation. So it's really part of like a bigger model to open that space for the people who are most harmed and impacted to drive policy solutions and interventions and make their lives better.
Questions? No? What question you have?
Go ahead.
So I know I don't have any, questions because you actually provided, a lot of information and my question was actually, that was the biggest one around that part. So I didn't really come with any additional questions for you because you answered questions already that I had around GI in reference to data, numbers, cost and what a pilot would look like and examples. So I didn't have any questions from a committee standpoint. Not hearing any questions from any other committee members?
I mean, if you guys are creating space, I would.
Yeah, I am
say-
creating.
Uh,
I knew Justin would be the one.
Just diving deeper into that. So if we were to make a recommendation to move forward with some type of investment in this, what kind of guidance would you share with us on how to utilize that research from the last 4 or 5 years, or who the county should engage with? Like, can you craft that a little bit?
Yeah.
for us?
So I would say the first person I would get on the phone with is Santa Clara County. They're running it out of their chief executive office. Their county is holding this work. So it's very different. There are other places where the county does not own, like the county might provide some information to the people
Mhm.
facilitating the pilot, but the pilot might be facilitated by an outside community-based organization or a foundation. In Santa Clara County, they own the work. They're working with community partners, but the CEO, the chief executive office is really at the center of it. And they're pretty experienced now, having run several pilots. So, and also Melanie Jimenez attends some of those convenings that I was talking about. It's called the Guaranteed Community Practice. So she's very visible and very willing to engage. There's other staff members within their department or even with their justice system department who I've spoken with who are also very happy to share their knowledge.
You
Yes.
said GI community of.
Correct.
Community of practice, yeah, and there's a national community of practice, there's a California specific community of practice, there's a Bay Area specific community of practice, and I'm sure there's other geographies that I don't know about, because I'm not there.
Can we just steal your brain?
Yes, and there's the Coalition for Reentry Cash and California Attorney General's Reentry Roundtable is interested in this, so there's it's kind
That's
of,
helpful.
it's happening. And
Yeah.
I'll say one more thing, which I lifted up, I think I lifted up on the agenda, which is the HIRE initiative in 2022-23 was a legislative motion to provide $52.5 million to the Workforce Development Board. 30% of those funds could go to direct cash payments. So it was targeted toward employment, but it was understanding that it's not just about getting people into jobs, it's also they need cash support for stability and security. So that was one-time funding. There's advocacy to get it to be, not just one-time funding. But yes, a lot of recognition about
Great.
cash is care.
You want to open it up?
Yeah, you good with your space now?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since there's no more questions from the committee members, are there any questions from those in the room?
Yes, I'll try to keep it brief, and you sort of answered it, but I think I appreciate that you recommended that folks use the advisory panels basically. And one of the things I'm curious about is how has gender equity been included in that, right? Because if you're looking at historical metrics for the justice system, they're gender neutral, and we know that pathways into and out of incarceration for women is gender specific. And so how do you recommend addressing that so that there's equity in allocations, and particularly because we know that women are often parenting, right? So $1,000 for one person versus $1,000 for four people doesn't go as far. So it's very helpful.
So a couple of things to that would be that I would consult the people who are doing that work around gender equity in the criminal legal system. And there are amazing people doing that work. And I am not by any means an expert on that work. But I would also say that there are, like, the Magnolia Mothers Trust was an early pilot that took place and has published findings that focused on Black women in Mississippi. There's the Abundant Birth Project. I don't know if you've heard of that one. So that started in the city of San Francisco. And it was also then funded through the California Department of Social Services, which is actually, California was the first state to fund guaranteed income pilots. So the Abundant Birth Project is to improve the deplorable maternal health disparities, right, between for Black women. So they launched in San Francisco. They have actually now expanded to other counties, including Contra Costa. So that is one of our new pilots. And they were seeking applicants. I think I'm meeting with the Abundant Birth Project person next week. I think they're probably in their screening and kind of evaluation of the applicants that came in. But that's another pathway to go. And it's such people, I'm just going to reiterate, people are so generous in this space because everybody involved in it is super excited about it and impassioned about it. So that, and open-minded and wonderful. And I had one more thing to say, but I cannot remember it. So don't let it go.
It'll come to you.
Maybe. I don't know.
You have
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Any other questions? in the room?
If you could speak to, because I know you have it in your report, but just for the sake of folks that are here, can you talk a little bit about what measures are in place for not having cancellation to any sort of general assistance or public benefits for someone who is a recipient of guaranteed income, because it does adjust their income. And participants may be hesitant to sign on board if in fact it does disrupt, or there's a perception that it may disrupt their benefits.
Absolutely. So the most common kind of process or step in the process is to provide benefits counseling. And oftentimes if that's done in-house, so like if it's done in the county, then there's probably somebody already in the county to provide that kind of benefits counseling. But if it's done through a different process, and oftentimes they'll pay, they'll allocate funds to somebody who come in with the knowledge of that landscape and share with people directly, this is what it might impact, this is how it might impact. But I noted and I'm going to read from it because this gets into the technical things that, and it's very recent with California did, so I'm going to take a minute to read, because they have used what are called benefits waivers, and our county actually applied for one. For the pilots that are running here, which there are City of Antioch, City of Concord, Abundant Birth Project, and then one that's ideating in Richmond. But I'm going to just read because I do think it's important to know. On February 28th, 2024, the California Department of Social Services issued a statement that under AB 120, GI payments would be exempt from consideration when determining eligibility and benefit amounts for CalWorks. This supplanted the need for county welfare departments to apply for waivers. So this is kind of a movement. People are becoming more aware. And as Justin pointed out, and thank you for pointing that out, it was like wrapping my head around how much I could get into the presentation. This is not meant to supplant the existing supports that exist, that are here. This is meant to say the existing supports aren't enough, right? They're not doing enough. We have skyrocketing cost of living. We have groceries that just never go down, but only ever go up, on and on and on. We don't have living wage job, on and on, right? So this is not pathway to give someone something, but at the same time take something else's away.
Right.
Okay. So the state is slow, right? All these public systems are slow and sluggish. We know that, but they are trying to respond as best they can and hopefully turn from, adopt a positive, not punitive approach to providing people with stability and security.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jill. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, piggybacking on what Rachel just said, the Board of Supervisors did approve, Marla Stewart submitted to the Board of Supervisors for that waiver because we don't want those people who are on these pilots to be just bumped over the ability to collect all of the other benefits. So our county did opt into that.
Right on time.
Okay. And I just wanted to note one, you read a lot of quotes, great quotes in here. And I was just glancing at this and I love the last one. You say people reentering the community have served their time. They have. And that's that one line is a very big, big, big statement. So I definitely thank you for coming and presenting, providing this great information. This will allow us to kind of go back and discuss at our next meeting on how, you know, the information that you provided and gave us great ideas on how to utilize the funding.
Well, I was
Thank you so
happy, and I'm happy to provide. I have so much information and lots of passion, so you need more?
Yeah, I just
You
want to
just
take your
asked me.
brain. I'm trying to keep
You don't want my brain, that I can tell you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
That was a
thank
good way to end.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to, as mentioned earlier, the sheriff's office is not here to report. So any questions that we have, can we bring that? If we do have questions for them, I don't know if we have enough time to get it back to them by the 22nd, Patrice? If there are questions. Okay.
Yeah, I know Jody is out right now, and I can't recall when she'll be back. But we can at least submit the.
At least submit if we have.
And we'll see what we can get back. But if you guys want to have some time to, discuss what is at least here available to you, you can also make space for that.
Okay, so I'll open it up to the committee members if they had any questions in reference to what was said by the sheriff's office. Oh, and then I forgot my discussions. I work in there, familiar with it. I don't have any questions. So I'll leave it to you two to. Questions for me.
Just rereading, I don't think that they highlighted anything that hasn't been raised by another group. I mean, their ask is bridge housing and transportation. Sad that they're not here. This is, we keep talking about like connecting the dots and bridging gaps and the difference in response to our questions versus other departments is pretty dynamic. And so I think in our reflection, just trying to identify ways to strengthen this relationship.
Correct.
And to continue to bring everyone to the table so we are aligning. I guess it's just more of a thought than a question.
Did you have anything? And again, after the meeting, if there's something that does come up, we can get those over to RJ to send out and we can attempt to get answers back before our reconvene on the 22nd to go over our recommendations. So I will now go ahead and move over to our next presenter, which will be Game Plan for Success. Again, I would give my disclosure. I am employed by Office of Education, so I do not have any questions, extremely familiar. So I will now turn over to John and Raquel, and then we'll go ahead and start from there. Yeah.
Thank you. Back again. Repeat so far.
We have openings on the board.
Yeah, so Janet Evans with Office of Education, Game Plan for Success, and I'm here with Raquel, principal of the adult school. We're happy to be here again to talk about our pre and post release engagement services. I've gone in depth a little bit in previous meetings about certain things that we provide and do, so I didn't want to reiterate on those and lead people to boredom. So this morning I'll do my best to talk about things that we haven't talked about yet. So our program, first and foremost, is attached to the adult school. And so our mission as an adult school is to provide successful transitions to adult learners back into their community. And so
a big piece of that outcome is having a transition team that helps transition those folks from in custody, out of custody. Our first and foremost, obviously, goals is to help them further their education. And in order for people to further their education, if that's what they choose to do, they have to have stability. And so we also partner with a bunch of organizations, some of which are here, some of which we've mentioned in our write-up, to help us help them have a successful transition out of custody. So we are a 4-person but mighty team. Currently, we have one case manager, transition specialist that oversees folks in our program at Marsh Creek and Martinez, splits time between the 2 facilities. And then we have one case manager at West County who does the entire facility. We have one office assistant who takes care of all of our data management, our copy, all the things that we need done. And then I am the lead reentry transition specialist. And I'm responsible for a host of things. But I've also recently taken on all the employment pieces of what our program does, because unfortunately our employment specialist recently passed away. So that has been a transition that is still in the works. So we're, some of you probably didn't know that was what was happening, right? He hasn't been around, but we are moving forward and we're taking his legacy and everything that he provided and making sure that people still get the level of service and his smile. For those of you who met Daryl, his smile was the first thing you always noticed. So with that said, I wanted to focus a little bit more this morning on what some of the common gaps are for our participants, because we see them coming back more often than not within 10, 15, 20, 30 days more recently than we have in a little more distant past. So one of the biggest, in our opinion, one of the biggest things that's missing is the inside outside follow through, right? So again, I mentioned my team is 4 people. There's 3 of us, so we don't have the bandwidth to follow people out. So our group is tasked with, let's prep them with everything they need, get them referred to the right partners on the outside who we can hand them off to so that they can pick them up with a plan that's already been written, referrals that have already been made, case conferencing that's already been discussed about this person. And then those outside entities would be the ones to ideally meet them at the door, pick them up and take them out to whatever their next step is on their transition plan. So we've got the pre-release planning down, but the pieces that are missing are the bridging and the stabilization. So when people get to the door, they don't necessarily pick up the phone and call the partner they were supposed to meet that day to get services. When they get to the door, they're not necessarily going to wait for the bus to come pick them up and take the bus to the RSC or take the bus to BART. When they hit the door, they're probably going to call their buddy and say, hey, I need a ride to our place where we hang out. And then we see them 2 weeks later because they went down the path they usually go down. But they had the best intention before they got to the door because they talked to us about it. They told us what they wanted to accomplish. We wrote down their goals. And we motivated them as best as we could. So in our opinion, as an inside pre-release planning group, you really need to have people met at the door. And the outside agencies who are serving them, be present enough to meet with them inside before they leave, pick them up at the door when they leave, take them to their organization so that they can do ABC. Go to DMV, get your license squared away. Go to Social Security, get your benefits squared away. Go to get your card reprinted. Whatever you need to do, you stack them up in those first 72 hours, the things that have to be accomplished because those are the most critical. But also those 72 hours need to have some type of housing. Because if you're sending people out the door, they have nowhere to go. Those are the ones that are also coming back within the next 7, 10, 14, 30 days visiting us because they had nowhere to go. And I'm sure if we shared some names in this room, we'd all be like, yep, 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 because we all share the same people and they all have the same problems. And yet we can't find the appropriate solutions to keep them out of custody. And so that's one of my biggest gaps, is that there's just not the stability that happens when they get to the door. With that, the transportation piece, I think, is huge, and I called it available transportation, because there is some transportation that happens if a staff member from an agency can be present and call an Uber. There is some transportation that happens where they can call a taxi and the taxi can come pick the person up. But again, if I'm walking out of jail and there's a taxi waiting for me, I have no idea about this person. Am I gonna get the taxi or am I gonna call my buddy? I think there needs to be more emphasis on the person's experience walking out the gate instead of just sending random cars to pick them up and take them places. The other thing that I really would love to see, and I called it this specifically, bridge housing with a purpose. Because it's one thing to just put people up in a hotel for a night or for 7 nights, but it's another thing to not just put them up in a hotel, but let's work the plan. You know, let's get the people here at your location to do your resume, to help you with mock interviews, to do those job applications with you, to go get you interview clothing, to do the things that are going to matter that will lead to stability. So I call it with a purpose, because housing is just housing. But if we have our partners there, whatever the housing looks like, to work with them, they're much more successful and won't come back into the jail, because now they have things that they're working towards. They have the support of everybody around them. One other thing is immediate employment leading to more stable, higher level employment. And this was a very good model a couple of years ago that Goodwill had. The Bridges to Work program, it fit a particular population of our people. They could go out, they could go to Goodwill, they could get hired right away, earn some money. But at the same time, the job coaches were prepping them for higher level sustainable employment. And the job coaches and developers were developing the jobs for those people. So you were starting with something and not having to wait several weeks to get something. You were getting paid right away at a job, but people were invested in what you were going to do in the future. And I think we need more options like that throughout the county for the particular population who could really use that. Mentoring services. Our program has an extremely wonderful working relationship with men and women of purpose. I call them often for some very difficult cases, and I never get a no. It can be that they need to go to parts of the area where they don't go, but I never get a no. And so they come in, they meet with people multiple times. They make sure they get their vouchers. They will pick them up at the door. We have a pretty good track record of being able to schedule pickups as long as the individual is willing to wait. So that's the hard part. If that person is allowed to go out at midnight, if they're willing to wait for a pickup, they'll wait for these guys to come pick them up. But some will say, no, I don't want to wait. I want to leave. So we will schedule pickups. They will come, they will pick them up. They will take them to the rescue mission. They'll take them to the RSC. They'll take them to their office. They'll do what needs to be done for those folks, but they don't stop there. They follow them in working the transition plan that was created inside. And I just feel like that's a model that works. And after listening to Cynthia yesterday, I've had several calls with her about the Jennifer Project. And after listening to her again yesterday, talk about how their program works, it's key to have the relationship built inside and that person follow them outside. Right. And so that's how we've used MWP, because my team's not big enough to do both in and out. So we've relied more on them to do that piece for us, which works when the people are invested and follow their plan. But that's also why we reached out to Cynthia too, to be a part of what we do in custody. So we can do this specifically for women, and we can follow their program design and have the women have their own set of case managers and their own set of people that are going to help them transition out after doing their day program in custody. And so I think I did my 15 minutes, but that's what I wanted to bring to you guys this morning. So thank you so much for allowing us to do this.
I really appreciate the information that you submitted and also sharing the services that were not presented before, because there is a lot that is done in custody with gainful employment success. So I now would like to open it up to the committee members. If you have any questions of what was presented, you can make note of it.
Want to go first?
Either question. How solid is it?
Always has questions.
I mean, it's just curious. It's really. I feel blessed coming in this space because I think this is a huge opportunity to learn and to create connections. And I think when I was originally brought on to this task, I was a little apprehensive because of the amount of work and energy that has been going into it. And then I sit here and I hear you speak and I'm re-energized and re-empowered. So thank you. I also align, thank you for noting things that you haven't in the past. I think I starting to envision this broader picture of the work that you do and the integration you have with other organizations in the county. I appreciate your willingness to advocate for them, even though it might not bolster your team or your resources. You're saying this is what needs to be done for this population. Couple questions now that I just I'm going back to the sheriff's data, and they shared that in MDF, they have 168 people being released on a daily basis. WCDF has about 100. That's 12 to 20 per site being released per day. You're talking about this connection to either another organization or directly to transportation. Can you talk to me about the willingness for people to utilize that resource and what, if you can anecdotally talk about like percentage of use or percentage of engagement versus the gap that you're not able to serve or you can only call it tax?
Sure. So our program is completely voluntary. We advertise our services. Everybody who has a release date gets a letter inviting them to join our program 3 times. So they've at least seen our letters, they've heard our name, they know who we are, they get it 3 times, they're offered services from us. We send a lot of those out, but we don't get 30% back saying, yes, we'll join your services. It'd be nice if we had higher than that, but we typically don't. The harder part about that is you can also see here, besides the percentage they give out, the time of day they go out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that actually boggled my mind when I saw it too, but you know, our programs don't start until 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. And before that, there's already 700-800 people.
Yeah.
I mean, by their numbers for
Right.
that particular time frame that they counted that. So it's hard to speak to the percentage of people that are actually utilizing our services and would utilize what we have, but we can speak to the people who we know have used it, and
That's helpful.
it's, I would say 80% of the people we serve, and between all 3 facilities, we average about 150 half a year, like a 6-month period-ish. About 80% of those would use transportation services, would use MWP services if it was available. So MWP is only West.
Right.
So we can only give them the people returning to West, but the majority of the folks we serve are returning to Central and East. So if we had more of a collaboration in that area, we would think we would have more people interested in doing a more mentorship type transition out. But we only have that for West at the moment. But it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and it's even difficult. I mean, I know Nicole's on the board, but I think she'll let me speak for her. It's difficult because we will spend all this wonderful time with these people. We'll get all the referrals in place, they'll step out, and they'll be like, no, thank you. And how do you change that? You know, don't know. I mean, we do our best within our meetings and then our one-on-ones to help them with mindset. And then the other groups that come in, like MWP, helps them with mindset. But But yeah, I mean, trying to set transportation for people who are leaving, or even services for people that are leaving before or after work hours, that's challenging. And the only entity that's open to help people is the Sunday. From 11 to 18, and then half a day Saturday and by phone Sunday. So one entity throughout the whole county that's making themselves available after hours to serve. And again, that's West County,
Yeah,
so that's not
No.
central.
and then build,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Cynthia was asking if she could add some.
Yeah,
And just in
please.
response to your question, I think, and to reinforce Jana's point about all the great work that happens prior to release and not having that continuity of care when folks are released, like, and to the point about the quote from the guaranteed income report, like, is it scarier to go in or is it scarier to come out?
Yeah.
Right, I think that's a huge aspect. It's not about not wanting those services, it's that you come out of those doors and you're alone,
Mhm.
right? It's extremely overwhelming, it's extremely daunting, and so what if most humans do? We go back to what we know. So I think that really that continuity of care and having somebody to stay with them is huge.
Thank you.
No, you're fine. I don't like.
No, definitely, definitely.
I can certainly work on getting you more.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because this stood out to me as well. Is there opportunity for you all to provide feedback or response if you know individuals are about to be released, so they don't get released at 2 o'clock in the morning when you are not in that space? Or is there no kind of connection of dialogue?
So the best that we can do is try to schedule a transportation pickup by one of our community-based, like MWP or RFC or HealthRight. We can schedule a pickup at a certain time. The jail will do that, but the person has to be willing.
Okay.
And that's what I was saying. If they're eligible for release at 12:01, they don't want to wait until 7 a.m., 6:30 for them to come pick up. Actually, Cedric's been there at 5 a.m. a couple of times to
Yeah.
pick people up. But if they're not willing to stay, they go out at midnight and we don't know where they went, what they did. And sometimes they're the ones we see back the next week or 2 weeks.
Quick question.
Yeah.
During business hours, do you work with core outreach?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think you can
I like
open
the
it up.
questions. Any additional questions from the committee?
That was it.
That was it. Any questions from those in the room? None? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, shoot, I like questions.
I want to appreciate that concept of continuity of care, because we talk about wraparound care so much. Well, we don't talk about, which is incredibly important, but we don't talk about, right, the continuity and what happened, the duration aspect of it. And so you're right to quote guaranteed income. It's the same concept of just that time, you know, with the person believing them and inside out connection.
Additional questions? No, I see none. Well, I do want to thank you and appreciate you both for coming and providing the information that you did. Since I don't see any question from anyone in addition into the room, we will move forward. Everybody's okay? I'm just making sure.
I'm good.
Okay. So we do have another one of our presenters. I do want to move over and open the floor for men and women of purpose to go ahead and present. So we'll go ahead and let you present your presentation and information. Thank you. And it's on agenda what?
38, I think it starts, or 39.
Right there. Okay, thank you, Garyana.
So, for my apologies, I didn't get a chance to submit answers to the questions and our graphics. Frank is going to pass those out to the board members.
Able to do that?
Is that okay?
Okay, okay.
That's fine for the board members.
Yeah, for the board members. Let's put board members. We, your answers to your questions that you
Thank you,
attached
sir.
to our emails. And
Thank you so much.
provided graphics. I tell you, my presentation is gonna be a lot easier following Jana because we share the same problems. So men and women of purpose, it's for those of you who don't know, and so I'm gonna have to explain to the ones that don't. Men and Women of Purpose is also contracted to the Sheriff's Department by in-custody support services and programming. So we do cognitive behavior as part of our weekly, and we do this in all 3 jails, and we do it at least 3 times a week at West County. We even provide services in the same area for women as well as men, and for special housing and any other place they ask us to go. That's what we do. I want to thank Jennifer for recognizing our effort to be a part of the process, right? So I'm not suggesting with this inside, outside engagement, I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with our system of services. The problem is that the participants that we work very hard, our agencies are inside all the time, and that's our base under another contract, not under RJ, but on the Sheriff's Department. We're there every day and almost all day in our facilities. We spend a lot of time running back and forth, right? Spending time to work with individuals in order to build this relationship of help, right? Only to find that when we are also the West County Mentoring Program, West County only, when she talks about services in the West. So we're able to work with those individuals that we hope to get into our office once they're released, right? And then we've been pretty successful with that. This is our mentor director. If you want numbers, he can definitely give them to you because he does a great job at what he does. So the key factors with this process, where it looks like maybe our partners, and I consider myself one of the partners, and all of my partners, I have great respect for those agencies. But we can't release a person at the door with years of dysfunctional behavior. And even though we've worked on him and built positive enforcement inside of him, expect him to go out that door. And I like to teach when I do my classes, I say, the air on the other side of that fence is different. It's freedom air. And now you have a freedom to do what you want to do or what you used to do that comes automatically to you after you have created this behavior of doing this thing. So a lot of them won't wait on some of them won't even wait on the bus to leave the jail. They'll just start walking and hopefully the bus will pick them up on the way. That's how fast they're trying to get back to where the same thing. And even though we have built a strong relationship and reinforced all this positive mindset, we lose it at the door. Right? Not for everyone, but the greater part. It can even happen before the door, but you said they won't stay still. They won't stay until 8 o'clock for our agency to volunteer, because it's not our assignment to come pick them up. Because we want them to be successful. They won't wait. The whole mindset is already kicked in. And I can already feel it and taste it. Get back to my old self. It says here that 72 hours is critical. Because if we can get them past their first 3 days, then we know that they have bought into a decision to stay away. I'm formerly incarcerated, by the way. I spent 12 years in jails and prisons, right? Been to numerous drug programs. And I have over 18 years clean today, and Frank has 27. Get that out, right? So this is not a lifestyle that I'm not accustomed to, or a way of thinking that I'm not accustomed to. The thing is that we work hard. It's all about building a relationship of trust and getting an individual to believe that the possibility of change is possible for them. They buy into that. But when they walk out that door, that opportunity starts to look different to them because there's no one there that's been reinforcing this idea in my head at the door. Reentry doesn't start it starts in the jail, but it's really determined on what happens at the door. If I walk out that door and all I have is myself to deal with, I'm in trouble. And I mean right then and there. We see it happen all the time. The sheriff's department was gracious enough to fund us with a housing program that we did for over a year. And we picked them up at the door. The bus was waiting, no matter what time it was, for you to get in. And even some of those that had to get out on the way back. And you let me out now. And drivers would call me, I said, hey, if you want to get out, let them out, because we're not gonna be able to make a decision for him. But for those who have made a decision, need to have that decision reinforced by support. Our partners are waiting, right? We want them to come in, yes, and establish a relationship with them, but it's not their assignment to be there like it is our assignment to be there. So we spend a numerous amount of hours doing this. And so what we're proposing is this, and this is, and if you look at, you know, I know it's up there, but, and I'm pushing, and it's worded, reintroducing our inside-outside engagement. Well, we're not at necessarily, we're saying we use the word reintroducing because this concept, we had workable concepts like this deal that for some reason wasn't allowed to continue. I have a reason. I don't do the blame thing, and I don't. But it doesn't. It's not there, and so is our inside-outside engagement. We were once contracted to Health Right 360, and it's beginning to provide exactly that, an inside engagement, and we would hand them off to Health Right 360, right, to do their navigational work over there. But getting there was our responsibility. Well, there's no one, I've heard in these CAB meetings, the question was asked, well, who do we hold responsible for making sure that the process gets started? I want to accept that responsibility to make sure that any person who has a desire to get from that door to its next point of engagement gets it. That's what I'm proposing. Yes, it's pretty hard for anyone to make a transitional change from the homeless encampment over there by the mall. That's where they mostly want to get out. If you get anywhere near that mall, let me out, man. So it's pretty hard for them to make that transition, right? When I don't have a base of operation, a safe place to operate from. So what I'm proposing in this is, and I heard Jana's concept about the housing, but we do have many housing opportunities, but they're not immediate upon release. Not even for our AB 109, who was our key priority tier 1 person, is there housing available for them upon release. That day, they can go through a drug program and get transferred into an SLE. And that is another place where there's a gap. So we're proposing $60,000 in our budget here to work with that, to house as many people as possible. It's asked about when do we start this process, was one of the questions asked. We started it immediately we find out. So we just passed out, which is our daily inmate release report. It tells us who's been sentenced and what their release day is. I propose that we start with even the people who are not working with us. That's different. They're already working with us and they're not sentenced. But those people who are sentenced, if they're 60 days out, we need to go and offer them an opportunity to take a chance at changing their lives. That opportunity needs to be offered to them and the support needs to be given. So that's another thing we're proposing in this proposal. We will meet with them 2 to 3 times a week. Because you cannot build a relationship with anybody just on one visit. It just don't happen. And that relationship for trust is part of what I explained when I said I'm going to be incarcerated. I've been where you've been. So you can talk to me, because if you don't tell me, I'm going to tell you what you're already thinking about, because there are similarities in criminality and drug use. Right? And so I understand what those are. And don't get me wrong when I say that people who are not drug addicted and former criminals can't help people, right? It's just that they are more comfortable talking to somebody who is of their same kind. And then we can talk about the process of change at that same time to break that barrier, to loosen that hold of the past, the subconscious mind. We all know it does its own thing. We have to interrupt it. It don't interrupt what it's doing. It's got a mind of its own. That subconscious mind will take me there, and I have to learn how to interrupt that thought process at the very beginning. This is what we do in our cognitive classes, right? I don't know why you try 51 if 50 didn't work. You might as well give that up and try something different. So that's what we do in our group. The transitional plans. So I'm not proposing in our proposal, just like Janet did. We know what our agencies do best. They do outstanding with that transitional plan. I don't need to create a second plan if I'm doing inside engagement. I need to enforce their plan. Let's don't confuse the people with plans. A lot of people like to confuse them with plans, but let's stick to a plan. Let's have a universal plan, right, that we can all get behind, because improvement will happen if we all enforce that same plan. So once we get them to agree with that plan, the plan is in action. That plan, and I'm proposing in this that we take them to see their probation officer on that first. I used to do this before it was assigned to anybody, because I was getting into myself. But I used to be there 5 o'clock in the morning, waiting. Sometimes they didn't get released. I was like, man, I'm down here 5 o'clock. They got a hold or something else came up, but oh well, it's the commitment that I made to myself to help others. But we need to enforce that plan. We need to bring the probation officers in on that plan. So if we're escorting them from point A to point B, our first stop would be probation, right? We would talk that plan over with the probation officers. We would allow them, of course, as probation officers, to add to that plan. And then we would enforce the plan. We would take them to our next stop service provider that's highlighted in the plan. I'm not changing the plan. Right. I'm walking them through the plan. And I'm not talking about walking them through that plan one time, one day, this is a process to get them moving along. When we talk about handoff today, and I hear the word warm handoff tossed around like, it's like, I'm doing it. We got slogans. So we throw out the warm handoff, right? Well, I want to change that to the true warm handoff, which means I don't just send a referral through a portal, through an email saying that, he's being released and he might come your way. I want to bring him to your door. Yes, I will let the agency ahead of time know to be prepared that we will be visiting you on that day. Now, of course, you said, wow, that might be a big order for a jail that has somewhere around 500 people in it, right? But all 500 don't want to take advantage of the service. We can only help the ones who want to be helped at that time. And for those, that number is an achievable number. Because we can't get enough emails, texts and everything else from them. Constantly. I just got 3 inmate request lists to see the same person back-to-back days, and we just saw him yesterday. But he needs that attention. Cedric goes and he does what he's supposed to do. Renee go and they do what they're supposed to do. So, the employment part is important too. And I like the fact that, I remember we've been, Men and Women Purpose has been involved in this since the very beginning. We used to stick sticky notes on the wall when we were developing this plan. Some of those things that we had that have kind of, for whatever reason, are no longer in existence. Workforce development offers job fairs. I get about 8 notices a week of job fairs going on in this. We're proposing to take We are already contracted to get documents, which is ID cards. We have a process to get their driver's license. These things are already in process, have been for years. Is that no one has stepped up and said, I want the responsibility for making sure that get done. I'm here, our agency is here. It hurts us. Everybody knows, we all get, when we have to ask that person, man, what happened? What happened? Did you engage with the service provider? And it's on them. No, I didn't. What happened? I couldn't make it from. I'm sorry. Well, I'm more sorry about that situation than you are because I signed up for a responsibility of help. I let you down. So here today, I'm here presenting this opportunity to step in and be responsible and accountable for as many people, as many as needed. I'm back as CEO again, y'all. So it ain't the will for me to give that position up. I'll get up and go. Even though I have employees, I'll get up and go. Because I'm committed, they know. I don't play with the commitments that we make to the people we promise to serve. I hope that was, people are told me I'm too emotional. But I can't help but be emotional about, I want them to have what I have. Freedom, choices, opportunities. I want them to have what I have. And they can have that. I mean, the years of those 15 years I was going in and out of prison, I didn't think it was possible until I got tired of myself. And I didn't have a choice but to make it possible. Brandon took me to get my certificate of rehabilitation from the judge, who I no longer, of those 15 years of going back, I have no criminal record anymore. And I present that as a way to say that nothing is permanent. You can't change that situation. It's in your hands. All you need to do is apply yourself and really want what you want. You already know what that other life has to offer you. It's not gonna do that. So I know I'm gone. How many minutes do I have left?
I definitely want to just say, so we do have to move to Q&A, so I definitely want to point out and just say, because there's a couple of, I was trying to see if I could jump in as you were saying them because my brain cells don't hold on to stuff.
Yeah, mine either.
But there's a couple of things, and I'm just gonna make a statement before we go into Q&A, and we'll do both. There's a couple of things that you stand on, because I am actually a registered work girl too, and y'all know that.
Yeah, right.
So I've been around with y'all for a while, and it was just crazy as I'm listening to you, and it's the guaranteed income. Me and Jeffrey have been around each other for a very long time. When did we go wrong when we moved away from how it was first and now where we are now? Because the way it was at first, things were working in a sense to where people were actually moving around. There was all the things that were throwing out there when I first stepped into this game were there. And then we expanded, and then COVID hit. And so now we're back at square one. Well, I won't say back at square one. It's just funny how tables turn. And now we're back at looking and go, is the way we had it work the first way? So I just wanted to table that. You also made some, I truly believe, and agree with you in reference to warm handoff. I'm a true believer of that. There, people have a definition of what warm handoff is. I believe a warm handoff is an actual handoff. It's not I'm a referral. It's the actual, let me get you to where you need to go. Let me actually put you in the hands of that person. And it doesn't even stop there. You still got to pick it up after that.
Keep that going.
You got to keep it going. So it's a never ending, it actually never ends until exactly what you said the person gets done. I am also someone that's just impacted, so I completely understand that. And the hard parts of it, everybody's different. And you got to treat everybody individually and what their individual barriers are. And just because someone else is done right now may not mean that they're done later. It could take somebody 20 years. And you got to also accept that some people we work with are never going to be done.
That's true.
They're okay with it. So I didn't really have any questions because I know what you presented. I'm very familiar when you came the first time. I do like the extra parts that you added on there when you elaborated on the connection as well as kind of tied in. Y'all all had to tie together.
We didn't plan it that way.
I'm sorry.
He is not planned. Y'all did not set out to plan this that way. It is a reality that we see. every day that eats us up from the inside out.
I do have one question for you though, because I know that your footprint is amazing in West County, and I pull on this a lot. Frank know I do, because I bug him all the time. I just, would it look, I don't wanna say would, because it's not a question, because I know that you're putting the same amount of footprint that you put in West County. So, but give me a number, what is the impact, because since you're not stressed, even though you guys try to, and you will, if you're called on, you will go to another county. But what is that, do you have numbers to show, or an example of those that are not touched because you're not able to, or have the funding for your staff to expand out further? So how does that look to you all?
You wanna, oh, he.
I know, I see him in his
He
chair.
ready, he done up.
He was moving in his chair.
This is
You know, we had discussed this before, right? And so this was something that we do automatically. I gave John a spreadsheet. How many names John was on here? I say 7 names.
Yeah.
Something like that. And this is just something we were trying to see what worked, who connected, who didn't connect, who got involved in the services, which agencies did they touch,
Right,
and which ones just, were able.
right.
I mean, but we had a nice little list, and we still been having ongoing of who completed, who did what, and that's one of the things that we do through the service navigation. Is that, they service, first thing they need IDs, they need Medi-Cal, they need this. So without those, it's hard for them to get to the other programs, so it's a lot of different entities. So the immediate thing is that we try to focus. Right, or substance abuse. You can't get a job with those two, barriers staring you in the face. So basically what we try to do is just keep that all together and then just kind of work that person and meet them where they are. And then go from there. That's kind of, how we roll.
And last question, I know that you can't provide like names and things like that, and it's probably too short for this, but maybe later on down, if that type of information would be great if we're tracking, like, you comparing who they touch, I know from a program and services standpoint, that would be, and I know our chair is here, that'd be amazing information to be able to see that, and maybe that's a later goal, but, yeah, I think that'd be great to see. I'll see if the rest of the committees, I know we are pressed for time. Have any questions? I still have some time.
Can I add one more thing? So the percentage though, so the percentage of people who leave that jail that come back to East and Central County is about 75%. So we talking about Richmond and us being able to get in there and make a difference and give big numbers because we only dealing with a small amount of people. The large majority are coming this way. So they don't have the neighboring. We're proposing with this to have an office in East County as well. I don't know if it's in the budget, but we can make that happen. I already have a space picked out over where the old health rate 360 used to be. And so we'll move in there. We just need the space so that we can get to them quick than coming from Richmond. We're a Richmond-based organization. So we need to be this way to bring them. When we bring them this way, it's not we bring them this way and you're in this area. I do this in East County. You live in this area. You operate out of this area so that we're more accessible to that person, to our service providers as well. Because if he don't show up today, you need to call me so we can get after him before it's too late. So.
I just had a quick question. Tell me a little bit about what your outside engagement looks like. And it seems like, are you working to create any formal partnerships? Seems like Jana's agency has a problem and seems like you're in the solution business.
Well, we're partners. We're all partners.
Already a
We're
formal
paid by the
partner?
same money. Well, they're not, but we're paid by we're all of us claim re-entry.
I mean,
We equal the
formal
same
partnerships,
Huh?
formal partnerships.
There are formal partners. If we get paid by the same people,
Yeah, so tell them about like your work with RSC and with HealthRide and with
yeah.
Center Force.
Okay.
Those are
If
my
I can,
partners.
I'll clarify.
Yeah,
Their,
please.
their West County mentoring program is what's funded by AB 109.
Okay.
The jail to community services is a separate, that we're contracted through the sheriff.
I guess I was thinking bigger, because I know one of the problems you said as far as transportation after hours, I mean, bigger partnerships.
Yeah.
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 You know what I mean? So we rely on court.
Okay.
We rely on different county agencies. We have a Rolodex of people who are not in the partnership. Got to touch base with what
The resource look at. That's all. We look at, yeah, we have a resource.
Okay.
We have our own minimum purpose resource.
And also with this book, they have tablets. Right, so
Yeah.
everything, because COVID kind of stopped it. You don't know who services are still available, is this office still open, what time can they operate? So we created a book based on the tablet. So they'll know from that tablet what resources are currently available. Okay. Right, and that goes from, you can take a look at it, from probation all the way down. Yeah, that's the right.
So we've been, again, we've been in the part of the process since 2012 when it first went out. Over the years, we remained our relationship, partnership with outgoing and income, because there's been a lot of back, and some people have moved to branches. But the relationships are gonna maintain, we have a relationship with everybody, we have a relationship with. We're not gonna give up. I mean, that's what the true handout is all about. If you can't hand me out, if you don't have no relationship with these people, man, what you doing?
I have a quick question that's kind of piggybacking off of what she said, just to elaborate for everybody in her explanation of what's being funded through AB 109 and what's being funded by
Yeah, right.
someone else. Are you asking to expand what you're currently getting funded through your other provider versus to the outside? Because right now, AB 109 funding is only covering the mentor. So are we asking to expand what you're, but
Well, I'm not asking to because.
are the pilots you're recommending?
I'm
You're not asking, let me rephrase. Is it, let me take away the money part. Sorry, not, that's not what I'm focused on.
Yeah,
The idea, the program that's there is, and you want to expand that to, you want to do the same thing, because it's not about the money or I ask, it's
No,
about
East
what the
County-
pilot.
Okay, so East County has its own money already established and set aside for mentoring program. I'm not beginning into specifics of people and what. I'm proposing that this is a separate and outside entity contract pilot. Let's check the numbers. Our numbers for our last in custody engagement will be somewhere inside of Health Right 360, because that's who the person was that was paying us through the contract that they had with the county. I'm proposing with this is as a pilot, if that's what you want to see, what you money back, what you get for your buck, I got no problem with that. This separate, West County Mentoring has its own contract and its own assignment, and I'm not trying to come in here and suggest to anyone how they need, that's not my role. To suggest things, that's whoever role that is, probation or RJ, to make those determinations. West County Mentoring has a role, and it's not the same role as this role. We actually used to extend our West County Mentoring program into custody to do some of these types of things, but we had to pull that back because it's not a part of our contract, because it could be misconstrued as stepping on toes or doing other things, and I don't want my partners to assume that either. Sometimes we just so busy about trying to help people that we just say, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to step on your toes. So, no, we're proposing this separately, under, a pilot if necessary. And I'm sure if we try it for a year, or whatever, you'll see the numbers of increase of numbers. When you're gonna show this outcome for this is the increase in numbers to our partnering agencies. Health Right 360, rural, in all areas of the county. You'll see the increase because I'm gonna break them there. They're not gonna get lost in that shuffle.
I'm sorry, Frank, because I had cut you off, or have you had a question, so I definitely want to circle back. I'm not a rude chair. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, any additional questions from committee members? No? Any questions from individuals in the room?
Frank, can you, explain, or Audrey, explain the distinction between your jail to community services, with the current contract you have with the sheriff's office and what you guys are proposing?
With the sheriff's office, we basically go in and we had a little situation because again, we said, he talked about how when we started in custody mentoring inside, but then a part of our contract, we noted that we were no longer doing the in custody engagement sports as part of the mentoring portion. They're just doing cognitive behavioral therapy groups. And with that, you know, it's kind of like dealing with their thinking, why you got there, what's going on, just keep coming back, you know, and so that's separate. So we kind of pull back the mentor piece because we were like all over the place. So, you know, now we just kind of just basically meet them at the door. Ghana has transition plan for the mentoring attached to it. And so we meet that person at the door. We build that relationship upon request and make questions that come through. As they transition, we kind of gather the information and then build that plan according to the plan that's already been built. So we're just kind of coinciding with what they do.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I understand that my sheriff's contract, and it's always been this way, y'all, is that contract is sits apart and separate from, and sometimes you don't want to mix soups to get things in there together. But we do have in custody mentors under our sheriff's contract too. It's different from what he's assigned to do, or our mentors are assigned to do. Those are mentors that go by and talk to people. They're doing more behavior modification discussions about, man, aren't you tired of this cycle? It's not the same thing as reentry, support mentoring, navigation, planning outside the door. That's what he does. That he no longer does it there because our contract doesn't call for us to do that. But of course, when you in there, it's pretty hard to remember. And I have a problem with my staff because I try to make them, you know, to understand that there's a two. They need some, you know, it's kind of hard to sit there and talk about to a person about, you know, the behaviors that keep bringing you back here and how we can work on the thought process, because all of this came from a way of thinking, including your addiction. It's a thought process that keeps you there and took you there, right? And so how do we do that without adding future planning to that picture to get you to see why you should change this behavior, because there's a future for you out there. And that I know it's difficult, and this I probably are, you know, explaining, because our contract does call for in custody mentors, and they see them running around. They don't know which person they what job title they under that particular day. And they don't either sometimes, because it's pretty hard to stop a conversation and say, oh, I can't talk to you about that today because I'm not here as your reentry mentor, but as your jail custody mentor.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit on how the jail to community is a little bit different in comparison to what you are proposing?
Well, jail to community contract doesn't call for us to do any of this. It doesn't. It calls us to do the cognitive behavior, self-help groups, and then to follow up on that process. And here recently, now, and I'm not, when I say here recently, please don't anybody in this room think that I'm trying to complain about whatever decisions you make. I've just been following. But we used to enter those people in custody that was a part of our jail program. We would enter them into SAFE, so that just because while you got all this time on your hands, you can sit down and do this intake with us. That will save you time later if you didn't work with GPS, if you went to an outside agency, then you would have to sit down and do that intake process with them then. Well, I can fast track that for you by getting you in, putting you in the system, and having you already there. So I could make that referral. My mentors could make it. They were able to do that. They're not able to do that either under our old existing contract. And a lot of people, you know, so I'm not putting on what things should and should not be. I'm just here to follow instructions. and stop getting my staff going into areas that they're not supposed to go, that creates problems. But no, sheriff's, that contract has no parts of the proposing here today.
Thank you for the additional, I have a point of clarification. So are those services not being provided in East County? Is that what I'm hearing? Or they're just not being provided through Men and Women of Purpose?
Question again?
Are those services not being provided in East County
In
or
reference to what?
in reference to the community connection piece? So I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that Men and Women of Purpose is providing behavioral cognitive support in East County.
They are being provided.
Is there another provider that is working on that secondary piece that you all are doing in West County, but for the incarcerated individuals in East County?
We do have providers in East County that focus on those services, yes.
Got it. And do we have outcomes on that?
Not on the specific behavioral groups,
No.
because that's funded through another grant.
No, not the behavioral, the connection to community.
Do we have, you said we have outcomes?
Yeah.
Oh, you can at least have the information
Right.
placed in the safe service.
Yeah, it's not funded through everyone online, but
Yeah.
the services are there.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so I do want to stay true to our time. I want to thank you both, thank you all for presenting, because I do want to give everybody a break because we have a whole nother section to this meeting. So I definitely want to thank you all for presenting and the information that you gave and the addition that you added on to the first presentation, because that actually opened up a lot more questions that we had. So I appreciate you all for presenting. That's going to help us come back to our next meeting to kind of figure out how us as a committee want to move forward with recommendations for the funding. So we have completed our first half regarding our key priority items. We are going to take a 10-minute break to move into our second half of the meeting, which is around our departmental program modifications. So you may have noticed that we've had some additional people coming to the room. So thank you for joining us today. This discussion is going to be related to the pre and post release engagement activities, which will allow for county departments to give us an overview of their program modifications, requests, including their written responses. So we will reconvene in 10 minutes. Take a moment to get some water. You brought some lunch, hurry up and snack. If you're leaving, thank you for coming. And yeah, I gotta get something. And those on Zoom, we're taking a 10-minute break. And we are now in our second half. I gotta repeat that? No, okay. Our second half of the meeting for our can't talk anymore. Departmental program modification request for AB 109 access funds. This section of the meeting, we have 3 presenters to provide information around their program modifications that was submitted in front of CCP. Just a quick recap again. I'm going to always remind everyone we're on a tight schedule, so please hold any questions and comments for the section that's allocated for that time. So our 3 presenters for today is going to be our Contra Costa County Detention Health, which we have 2 representations in the room. We have our district attorney's office, and we have, I believe, Diana Beckman on Zoom. So thank you for coming. And then we also have our public defender's office, and we have in the room. So thank you all for coming for out of your business. Oh, she's in the hello there.
Don't scream it
I take that back. She's in the room. Thank you all for taking your time out your busy schedule for coming down here, and thank you again for spending the whole morning with us. I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. I'm sorry. So our first presenter will be our detention health, and I'm sorry, I lost my page on the agenda. It starts on. Can you pull back up the agenda, Garyana, please?
42.
Starts on page 42 of the agenda. So I'm now going to turn it over to you all to allow you to present the information within the agenda.
And we're trying to stick to about 5 minutes of an overview so we can do 15 minutes of Q&A. That's possible. I know it's tight.
Very quickly, I'm Dr. Sonia Sutherland. I'm the medical director for Detention Health.
And I'm Melinda Harris, I'm the administrator.
So thank you for having us. I will try to speak quickly, but I was sitting here just listening off to the presentation, a lot of wonderful services. And I just want to let you know that every day when I walk in the jail, I think if we can get health right inside the jail, we can get health right. We can get health right in the jail. We can get health right everywhere. And why do I say that? I say that because our inmate patients in the jail reflect some of the most complicated life and health circumstances in our community. In terms of isolation, lack of family support, health challenges, literacy issues, lack of education, unstable employment, lack of housing, often complex behavioral health, as well as medical conditions. And so every day in that jail, our team works hard to get the health care right for the people in the jail, because as our jail health gets lifted, our community will be lifted. And so we're here today to ask for $250,000 specifically for medication costs to purchase a medication called Subcommittee, which is an injectable form of Suboxone. And this is to treat opiate use disorder. It's a dose that's given once a month to help people with withdrawals and detoxification from opiates and to treat that condition. And this is really an important tool that we would like to add to our toolbox of treatment. As you know, substance use disorders are a major issue both inside the jail and outside the jail. And when people come in, they go through withdrawals, they're not feeling well, they can't even concentrate, they can't program with custody, we can't address all of their health issues until we get them stable in terms of their substance use problems. And not only that, just to highlight, some of the importance of this, we all know that there's a national opioid crisis, which touches every person, every community in the country, and is particularly problematic in correctional settings. And not treating opioid use disorder while someone is incarcerated leads to poor outcomes at release, such as a higher risk of overdose and death. In fact, the risk of overdose death is 50 times that of the general public within the first 2 weeks after release. I know we spoke earlier about the first 72 hours and determining what happens after your first 72 hours. The risk of overdose and death is the highest when people are first released. So for us, getting them stable while they're inside the jail is really important to treat them. And it's, it's multifactorial. Not only is it the medication, it's also our substance use counselors. We've done a lot to increase our program around substance use treatment, rapid induction protocols we've introduced this year. We're bringing in more counselors, diverse counselors, different languages. We're working on a lot. But specifically, the Subcommittee that we're requesting is an injectable form because, unfortunately, people inside the jail try to divert medication.
Right.
So our standard is to give an oral medication you take by mouth every day. Some refuse to come to fill call and they miss their dose, or others use it in ways that sell it and other things, and even safety concerns within the jail just from diversion. So this medication is an appropriate choice for us because it's once a month, it's injectable, you can't share it, you can't spread it. It has worked effectively. It's just a very expensive medication, and the dose is $1,600. We've had grants in the past to help support this, and we currently don't have grant funding. Now, we did just get an additional grant, but I want to emphasize that one grant won't cover the problem. And so that's why we're seeking additional funds and asking for this modification request. I think when I had mentioned the grant before, everybody thought, oh, great, you got this solved. No, we need additional funds. I can stop there if there are questions, but that's basically what we're asking for, just a stronger tool in our tool belt to address opioid use disorders.
Thank you. I do appreciate the breakdown that you gave in here and the information, as well as I appreciate you taking this step further and explaining how it aligns with our recommendations. So I really appreciate it. Absolutely. So two-part, I do have some questions about it, but also I know that the sheriffs was not here. But if you did have a time to see the agenda, there was a section in there where they reverted back to you guys for a question.
They gave us a question in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I definitely want to, that I asked that question. So there was a question in there, regarding the referral process and eligible criteria to access the services for health services while in custody versus community-based programs, and they felt best that you all could answer that question.
I was looking at that, health services in general or specifically around opiate use, you want me to answer both?
Both, please.
So, I'll try to say this quickly, but this is how our system of care works inside the jail. When people come in through intake, everybody that's arrested in Contra Costa County comes through Martinez Detention Facility for intake. And in that intake process, the sheriffs are doing their intake. Their health, we do an initial nursing intake screening where we go over all your medical conditions, you have medications, and ask you about conditions. And people are referred for mental health intake as well. So both of those happen, you immediately walk to jail. One of our questions is about substance use disorder. When was the last time you used fentanyl or those types of things? So that way you get time to start the medication, hopefully. But whatever your conditions are, then from there, we sort people into categories, if you will, we call clinically significant findings. So if you have a clinically significant finding, you will see a doctor within 3 to 5 days. And those are things where you have conditions that are untreated, uncontrolled, vital signs, doing a lot of things in intake to assess whether you have a clinically significant finding that needs to see a doctor either immediately, where we might have to send you to the emergency room, same day with one of the doctors inside the jail, or within 5 days of arrival. Substance use disorders qualifies for this within 3 to 5 days. People are seen by a doctor. And the same thing for mental health conditions, depending on what your functional level is, how you're assigned, and how frequently you're seen right from the beginning. So that's how we direct services upon arrival. If you have chronic stable conditions, for example, yeah, I have asthma, I had it when I exercise, I take one inhaler, and it's a chronic condition. We'll usually see them within 30 days. It can be sooner, but certainly within 30 days. And then we also offer people labs and screening. We take a lot of pride on doing public health screening. So we're testing for HIV disease, we're testing for tuberculosis, we're testing for syphilis, we're testing for hepatitis, particularly public health conditions that people are out on the streets with that are highly contagious. And of course, COVID screening and testing, all of that happens. So a lot of those things right from the beginning. And then once you come in, then you follow by the health system, depending on the frequency of it. It might be 1 week, 30 days, once a month, just like anybody going, to your doctor in the community you're seeing, and then you have a follow-up. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I appreciate you allowing me to take a step back before I get to my other questions.
No, I like to, dispel the mystery, because if you're not inside the jail, you always
have no idea,
right?
Right.
What's on here?
I do want to take a second to note one of the key things that you said about this medication, what it will help with. Because I know it's a big thing in reference to, although I know we're giving people medication, they can use in the incorrect way. So I can see the benefit of we're going to a shop because that will allow them to no longer try to misuse the medication that's given. I do have some questions in reference to what you put in here. Go down to my questions. So quick question, because the whole CalAIM thing is going on.
Yeah.
Is there any support from CalAIM around this medication or any funding coming from, or any connection or funding coming from that area?
I wish I could tell you, we're not sure whether Medi-Cal will cover Subcommittee. So it will cover, so when people are released, then they can continue on their medication.
Right.
Suboxone, which is the oral form that we use out in the community. We also refer our patients to our Choosing Change program in our ambulatory clinics, so they can continue. We don't just drop them off, right? They leave. And so Subcommittee, we're not sure if it will be funded by Medi-Cal. We're hopeful. There's a lot of move across the country to use this more inside of jails because it is injectable. It is just a once a month dose as opposed to a daily dose, but I don't know exactly.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of work still being done with that.
Right.
My next question is, since this is one-time funds, and thank you for talking about the grant that you currently have.
We don't
Yeah,
have money yet.
but it don't have, right, and that how it's still not enough to cover.
Right.
Since it's a one-time fund, what are your goals or plans to sustain the medication if it was approved? Since this particular, a bucket of money is a one-time tax, right?
Well, that's why we're hopeful that there'll be more clarity around Cal-Aid and whether or not
Okay.
this was covered by Medi-Cal for the next year or two.
And then let's see. I think you've touched on this. Another question I had was the process for, I know that you talked about the pre and post release where it starts inside and then you ensure that they have the medication when they get out. I know one of the key things that we've heard when behavioral health did their presentation is, I know you may have experienced this, individuals been able to get access to the medication when they're out. I know there's issues that we're hoping that Cal-Aid can fix regarding Medi-Cal and access to medication, but do you have any type of percentage on, or would individuals be able to get this medication, or is there any collaboration with partners for the outside to make sure if they start the shot with you inside, when they get out, they'll be able to continue that?
Yeah, so what we usually do is, we know the expected release date for a fair number of patients. So we plan to switch them back to the oral form.
Okay.
Also, if they get, sometimes they're going to prison, and so they get their injection right before they leave. So again, it will last 30 days. So in the
Okay.
next setting, then you can transition, right? They can pick it up from prison, which form they use, you've got a 30-day window. But if they're going back into the community, Subcommittee funding, we switch them back so they can take the oral dose upon leaving.
Thank you. That's one I promise.
Nope.
And it's probably there, is there any data or anything that supports the, and I heard you talk about it, so I think that that's great. That supports the difference in the injectable versus the pill. Like how I guess, I mean.
In terms of like,
How it actually, go ahead, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, because you may say it better than me. I'm not, I'm trying to think about the right way to ask
if
it.
it makes a difference.
Yes,
in,
ma'am.
How long they can stay sober.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I don't have that particular information. I think that's I'm not sure because of the cost of Subcommittee exactly how much it's used in the community. Mostly Suboxone is oral medication in the community. But again, there may be more uptake in Subcommittee just because of once a month shot, right? It's like many medications. You know, people would have to take a pill every day for a variety of medicines. Some are given monthly. I mean, there's just advances, right?
Yep.
In science and medication.
And I agree, I'm a diabetic, so I take a once a month shot, so I definitely understand.
That's right. There's, you know, a lot of advances.
Yes, ma'am. So those are, I appreciate you answering my questions. Those were the 4 main questions I had after.
I just have one piggyback off of that. I think I'm struggling to wrap my head around kind of the use case of this in a sense of, is it layered with behavioral change that
Absolutely.
someone is then like, we're gonna use this for 3 months so that we can stabilize you and then try to transition you to this medication that we know you're gonna be accessing once you're released? Or just kind of talk me through, because if we're releasing someone and they don't have access to it, we don't want to set them up for that standard, knowing that they won't be able to have that outside.
Right. And so we couldn't prescribe like an injection. We can't give you an injection to take home.
Right.
So everyone inside the jail, we prescribe discharge medications.
Okay.
And so actually, when you start on opioid use disorder treatment, we automatically put in a discharge order because sometimes we don't know when you're gonna leave.
Got
So
it.
if I'm giving you 8 milligrams a day, I'm gonna also order the outpatient prescription. So if you leave before we know about it, you have it in there.
Great.
In a pharmacy waiting. Subcommittee, our plan to use that is around people who are diverting
Okay.
the oral form. Most people in the jail will continue with the oral dose daily. But for those that, for a variety of reasons, maybe can't take the oral dose or have been caught misusing it once or twice, then we would switch to the Subcommittee in order to treat their condition and address the issues around diversion. And that would then be the monthly injection. So now, if we know your release date, then we can transition you to the oral, or we can have you continue, and then you get your dose before you leave, and then you get your outpatient prescription, which would be the oral form. So they would never have a gap in care.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's not so much the gap. I appreciate the clarity. I don't think it's the gap in care. It's more like if someone's diverting in custody, how do we change that behavior so that they're not diverting?
So anyone who's
outside
caught
of custody?
diverting, it's not just only the medication, right? And even substance use treatment is not just a pill, right?
Yeah,
So all along, we have substance use counselors. We're increasing our staff for substance use counselors. Groups are available. And if someone is caught diverting, that also includes a referral to substance use counselors at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Any other questions? Chair, any questions?
She can answer my own.
Yeah, it was great.
So I do want to say that we have been, I just want to highlight that in 2023, we had a 35% reduction in the need to use emergency rescue Narcan within the jail for people overdosing inside the jail. So our program is working. We hope to eliminate the need for Narcan.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you guys considering this. This is an important tool in our care.
Thank you
Awesome. Thank you for the time.
so much. Any additional questions?
I'm good.
So there's no more questions from the committee. Is there any additional questions from anyone else in the room? No. Any questions, Garyana, from Zoom?
Michelle has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to ask this clarifying question. It might have been stated, but perhaps I missed it. I went and visited one of our CBO partners in Richmond, and she had indicated that the CDCR oftentimes does not release the members, even though they're released from custody. And this coordinator indicated that it creates delays for the members to access medical services. And impacts prescriptions for many who have chronic health conditions such as diabetes. And of course, it impacts their mental health services and treatment medications. And this CBO, which is RSC, did indicate that they do help with prescriptions. I guess my question is, are you aware, or is this at all being addressed with the CDCR to help expedite the release of those who are reentering? I hope my question makes sense.
Yeah.
CDCR?
People being released from prison, are we aware of that inside the county jail? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, that apparently this is causing a bit of a barrier to many reentry men and women who are trying to access services, access their health care. And so obviously this is creating like the impact for them to restart Medi-Cal or to even start Medi-Cal, because it's showing in the system that they're still in the detention facilities. And so
I don't know if I beg your pardon?
I think it's more or less an access to Medi-Cal.
Well, I think that's the whole push for Cal-A, right? That people can get their Medi-Cal 90 days prior to release. That's the whole move of this strategic plan to look at the Medi-Cal population and specifically for the justice withdrawal. So if people are being released from prison and coming back into the community, I mean, that's why Contra Costa Health is here, available. I know for people inside the jail, we have a community resource memo that people are given in case they need to, How do I access food? How do I access housing? How do I access health? If they happen to not have a, pre-existing approach. I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but in terms of the prison release and getting Medi-Cal, I can't really speak to that. I can only talk about the, county jail and what's happening, to meet the, bring on Calais. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to, again, just say thank you for providing this information. I have to catch myself back. And adding, again, I really appreciate you adding that additional piece, because that was really helpful. So we will reconvene on another day and be able to come back together and look at what you presented and tie into our recommendations. So you're more than welcome to stay for the rest if you like. Okay, so again, so now we're going to move over to our next presenter, which is going to be our district attorney's office. And we actually have Diane here on there. So I'm going to now turn it over to you all. You can sit here and present or whatever makes you feel comfortable if you want to be. Thank you. Did you?
There's two different.
What?
It's gonna be okay.
No, it's not.
Oh.
No. Right, the one that says budget should not be in there. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and apology for that confusion. We didn't realize that, we thought that because my PowerPoint is just supporting what we had already submitted in the written document, that we would be able to present it, use this as a visual, but that's
Okay.
okay. I'll just make do with what we have.
So the chair to sit here, or you want to stand? I wouldn't bring you a chair over if you
I
like.
could sit over
Okay.
there.
Get the chair there for her to sit. One of the chair, and she can sit here.
I'll just move right here.
Okay.
That way.
I didn't want you to have to stand, so.
So, basically, I wanted to make sure, one, that the concept of what the Neighborhood Restorative Partnership does is something that's clear to everyone, and then explain our budget acts and why we think it is such a good fit for the funding. So our NRP is a community-based adult pre-filing diversion program. And what it does is it uses restorative principles to resolve low-level nonviolent cases outside of the traditional court. It is comprised of volunteers or panelists, just like yourself, who are actually from our communities and who have been trained through the funding that we received and the principles of restorative justice. And then the panelists appear in what we call a conference with the participants and any victims who would like to be present, so that they talk about the harm, they address the harm that was caused by whatever violation of law might have been, and they seek to reach an agreement on how to make things right. So it gives an opportunity for the participant to avoid court, to avoid criminal charges and convictions, an opportunity for the victim to be heard and to have their concerns addressed, and an opportunity for the community to engage in the process, which helps to strengthen public safety and to rebuild lives. It is also important to note that it is voluntary in terms of our program, and it is confidential. So restorative justice, it considers a violation of law as an act that causes harm to both an individual or business, but also to the entire community. And so it aims to restore the victim, restore the community, restore the participant, and also educate the participant and hold them accountable. So I'm all the way on page 4 now. Our panelists come directly from our community, and they represent the needs and the interests and the perspectives of that community. And they also participate in a facilitated conference. They get a chance to identify the harm and seek to understand what caused the person to commit the offense, and then also, as I mentioned, explore how to make things right. We really think that
your goal number 4 is where this one would be primarily situated, because it is a totally preventive program to keep people out of the criminal justice system in the first place. And so what it does is no criminal charges are filed when the person completes our program. It means that they don't have criminal convictions on their record, which actually sort of kind of bleeds in a little bit to goal number 3. The goal number 3 is to increase housing, and I know this and opportunities in that nature. This doesn't actually hit that on the head, but it is tangentially related, because when individuals have convictions on their records, it keeps them from getting housing, keeps them from getting employment opportunities, from getting student loans, and all kinds of opportunities that will hinder their progress to be productive in our society. And so I think even though we are situated in goal number 4, it also sort of touches on number 3, because it does increase a person's opportunity to obtain housing and employment and all of those things. Right now, we're able, we currently receive funding, the CCP funding. And with that funding, we've been able to reach 4 cities: Concord, Martinez, Richmond, and Pittsburgh. But with the current level of funding, we're not able at all to expand our program. I mentioned that the panelists who hear the cases, the panelists, volunteers from our community, they have to be trained, and that training costs money. And so we don't have the funding to be able to train new panels in new cities. So places where we might need the program the most, we're not able to expand to those places. Also, we have one individual, Janet, raise your hand over there, who has many responsibilities. She's an assistant investigator in our office. You all may have seen Bear, our service dog, facilitation dog, who helps witnesses in court. She has that responsibility, and NRP, which is a heavy lift for any one individual all by itself. She has to make contact with all of the possible participants, all of the panelists. She has to attend the training. She has to attend every session. Then she has to track their cases. So we are tracking them for recidivism. And so it's a lot of responsibility, and she's been doing that without really any assistance. And so that's why we need the funding. We need to be able to expand our program. We need to be able to train additional panelists, but we also need additional team members to be able to carry out all the functions. One thing that's important, we've had 44 cases that completed last year. We are tracking those cases for 3 years, so that for recidivism. So our goal is that with what they've received from this program, the services, the direction, that they're not coming back into our criminal justice system, and we've had very good success there as well. And let's see. We had 2 testimonies from our panelists to talk about why this program is so important and so impactful in their community. But those are in the PowerPoint. We won't be able to share those with you. But getting to our ask is on page 8 of your materials. It is an ask of little over $190,000. That lets us get a case preparation assistant to help with all of the work that has to be done to support this program, as well as a half-time administrative support, and provides the training for our new panelists so that we can expand the program, and then also provide interpreter services, which we don't currently have, which hinders our ability to serve those non-English speaking persons who would like to participate in our program. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that great information. I appreciate the additional PowerPoint to simplify what was submitted in there. So thank you for that. You answered some of my questions I had. Another question I have is, what does the panelist make up? I know you said within a community, but what are the requirements to be a panelist?
Oh, Janet, can you want to help with that? First, you have to apply.
Good afternoon, everyone. So panelists do have to reside in Contra Costa County, not just be employed. So we do want people that are being affected, right, that live within the community. They have to be over the age of 18. And we want as much diversity as possible. So we have folks that are retired. They came to us from Rossmore. We have college students who have an interest in criminal justice. Most of them want to be public defenders one day. So it's really awesome to kind of get those perspectives. So just tons of diversity, doesn't matter, but we have teachers, we have stay-at-home parents. It varies. And again, the requirement, so no felonies within the last, I believe, 10 years.
10 years.
And then no misdemeanors within the last 5. That's not to say that, you know, if I do get one and this person just kind of exceeds everything, checks off every box, and you clearly see that they're doing they have a huge difference going on in their life, I do bring it to my supervisor, so my chief, and then we discuss it, and then we bring it to DA Becton, and then just say, hey, look, this person would definitely benefit this program. These are kind of the circumstances behind that crime that they may have committed several years ago. How do we go about this and try to help them?
And ideally, the panelist is from the community where the cases come from. So that is our goal. But because we can't train new panelists, we have a limited number. So we sometimes can't always meet that goal. But the goal is, like, for example, if your case is from Concord, that your panelists would also come from your community.
Thank you so much for that. And then my next additional question is, I'll probably have the same question for everybody. So since this is a one-time fund, what are your plans and goals to sustain if this was funded within this money, well, how would you sustain
Sure.
the additional staff and so on?
Yeah, we think we're going to have plenty of opportunities to be able to obtain funding. One, we're always applying for new grants. The new grants are coming out all the time. So we will definitely be aggressively seeking additional grants. And because we now are able to maintain a track record, now that we've had people graduate, we are tracking that recidivism. We think we also have an excellent opportunity as well to obtain additional funding through our regular county budget process. So we don't think we'll have any trouble in sustaining the program going forward.
The questions that I have, are there any additional questions?
Just a couple. So point of clarification, Patrice. If this is a modification request, is it going to be carried forward in the budget?
That I don't know, because what you all are considering are their requests out of the set aside 15 million.
Got it. But so it wouldn't actually be a modification to the budget. It would be this one-time funding.
Right.
One-time
funding. Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for all of the information. This is a really wonderful program. 2 quick questions. One, the line item for your training is going to double, and you talked about expanding services. Has there been any discussion about trying to bring that in-house to reduce costs, like maybe having a quarter FTE, because this program is starting to kind of expand so quickly?
Yeah, the training is actually a professional who specializes in the restorative justice practices.
Got it.
So it's not a skill that we have in-house to be able to do that training.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And then do you have any preliminary?
Again, if I could just add.
Yeah, of course.
When we set our program up, there are a few other programs that operate in the state of California. So we touch bases with all of them to obtain the best information, the best trainers, et cetera. So we've gotten these as referrals, and it's not that any of the offices are doing in-house.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And then do you have any preliminary data on the recidivism rate for that cohort of 44?
Yeah, we've had one person. Oh, 0. She said 0.
That's
0
incredible.
in the year. Yeah, so.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was 1, but she's telling me she's the one that knows. 0. Yeah.
May I
And
add
that's really-
one thing to that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first case ever, and I'd like to talk about it because we didn't have our video, and sorry for interrupting, but the first case ever was a gentleman who was drug addicted. He was really upset with the situation went in, the situation that happened. I called him, he hung up on me a couple times, and then the first conversation that we had was what the bad word expletive is he's obviously going to do for me. I'm a criminal. Those were his exact words. So I said, give me a chance to show you how we can help you. If I fail you, then you just don't answer my calls again. So we set him up for the first panel. He didn't show up. And I called him back the next day. He finally answered. He's like, I was high as a cloud. I was in heaven. I'm like, okay, can I get you to come to the next one, please? Like, just hear me out. And he agreed to the next panel. He showed up. He cried throughout the entire panel with the panelists. He really bonded with them. And I've gotten a few calls from him since. He has 2 dogs, a girlfriend. He moved out of the county and he's doing really well and he's got a job. So That's what the DA's office did for him. And he consistently says how grateful he is that someone who he didn't expect, like the DA, offered him a service that he would never have thought was an option.
So I have an additional clarifying question. Thank you for adding that piece. So these are individuals that don't have any charges at all. And trying to prevent them from having, or could they possibly have? I'm sorry. Sometimes I get low for some reason. So these are these individuals that have never been charged at all. I mean, they have no type of criminal record, and we're trying to prevent that, or could they have in the past? And
It could be both. Okay, it could be both.
Good, other question.
okay.
Let me ask one quick one. As far as translation, what are you looking at? Because people speak many languages.
Well, we would, well, I should let Jen answer that, actually. because-
So far, the biggest ones are Spanish and Cantonese, actually not from Mandarin, from Cantonese. So those were the two. Everybody else is pretty good understanding of the English language.
I guess what I was really asking, are you talking like language lines? Are you talking about live people in person?
So we're talking about actual interpreters, so definitely not language line. So we are doing these panels via Zoom to avoid people having to miss work, school, or other responsibilities. And so just having the language line tried to pass, it wasn't successful. So having a live person present for that would be very beneficial to both the victim and the participant.
Okay, what happens when the person who was arrested speaks Russian or Mandarin or something
So
else?
we've had, yeah, so the first call I've made actually has been in-house where I'm like, all right, who speaks this language? As of right now, honestly, I've not come across that issue. That's not to say that we won't, because Contra Costa is a large county. I would like to start with the major languages that I know we're gonna run into, which is Spanish and then some sort of Chinese, either Mandarin or Cantonese. And even Farsi is another one that I've kind of come across. In some cases, so one case that I did have, a family member who was that person's support in a sense, was present with them on the panel and they were able to translate between the parties. So that helped a little bit.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So thank you for presenting and providing the information. And we are now going to, before I don't want to be rude, any questions?
From the public.
No, for the public. Nope. All right. So
Nope,
then
no
we're gonna.
question.
Okay, so we're now gonna move on to our public defender's office, and I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm not sure who wanna go first. Oh, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out who's.
Thank you all for coming in person. We appreciate it.
I can begin when you guys are ready.
Oh, perfect.
Well, thank you for allowing Angelina and I to present on our client services unit management manager proposal. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our mission is and specifically what our client services unit is, and then turn it over to Angeline to talk about why this proposal fits into 4 priority areas that we're discussing. So many folks in this room know who we are and what we do, but I think it's always important to frame this discussion through the lens of what our mission is. And at the Public Defender's Office, in the Public Defender's Office, our mission is to fiercely and aggressively represent people who are charged with crimes in courts throughout Contra Costa County. All of our clients are indigent. Many are mentally ill and unhoused. 37% of our clients identify as Black, 30% identify as Latinx. Our clients are some of the most vulnerable community members that you can find. But in addition to engaging in that aggressive litigation that I just mentioned, we strive to advance equity and further community stability through our client services unit. And they really carry that holistic defense mission that you often hear that's associated with our office. Our client services team is integral to carrying out that mission. Our social workers and client services specialists on our team provide critical resources to our clients, and they address immediate needs, including reentry housing services, behavioral health supports, employment opportunities, and re-entering into the community. And that's just a little bit about what our mission is, who we are and who we serve. I want to turn it over to Angeline to talk specifically about this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, are you good to start?
Yes. Oh, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. It's good coming up last. So thank you for introducing what our program is. We've been, the public defender has been a champion of holistic defense with social workers for the past decade. And in that time, we've gone from one social worker who was providing an array of services. And those array of services would have been the 4 points that we're supposed to be hitting today. In that time, in that decade, through mixed funding, that our public defender and our chief public defender have access, we've now grown from 1 to 12. And that is a huge growth for one small department. We have been able to meet the needs of more than 800 people this year alone. Within our program, we have a couple of different units within units. We have our HIP, that's made up of social workers who provide services to people at the early reentry centers. Just in that HIP program alone, which I think has been going on for a bit more than 4 years, they've been able to reduce failure to appears just because of the early representation attorney, the social worker component working together, and then intensive case management. We've been able to reduce the FTAs. We have another social work unit, we call it the alternative to supervision. Those particular social workers work directly with misdemeanors who have a charge of domestic violence. And we are working to ensure that people don't have barriers to complete their batterer intervention programs. We've accessed funding from other sources where we're able to pay for some of those services and create like incentive programs to make sure people get to where they need to be. We're also doing assessments for substance use disorders, mental health disorders, housing, and linking them to employment services. We have another unit within our program where we work with clients and we're able to holistically tell their entire stories, right, to advocate for alternative sentences. We have another unit in our department with our mental health diversion, where we are creating mental health diversion plans. We've increased it by 50% of plans that we've created because when behavioral health is unable to complete those plans in the court, our social workers are the ones that are completing those plans, ensuring those people are linked to services, making sure that they have housing, and making sure that they're able to complete their diversion plan so they may not have further charges. So when we think about going from 1 to 12 and the amount of people that we've been able to serve, it really is amazing. Excuse my excitement because I've been here from the ground up. One of the things that would be beneficial for this program to continue to serve folks, to be able to gather data, to make sure we're doing things like continuing to contract with some of our housing providers, right? Because we contract with Hope Solution H3. In order for us to keep streamlining this, we feel like it would be instrumental for us to have a program manager. Our team is amazing. The public defender team in Contra Costa County is an amazing place to work. We have amazing folks. But most of our folks are attorneys, and that is what they do, and they're excellent with it. What we're hoping for is that you all will see the benefit in order us to continue to hit those goals, that we have a program manager who will be cohesive, create a cohesive and streamlined approach. We put all that under one house. We're working together and we're still collaborating with all of our attorneys. Now, I know that everybody wasn't here, but like, for instance, when I came in, I know almost every single person as a reentry provider in Contra Costa County, because in our team, the client services unit, we ensure that we are at every single meeting. We make sure that we are going to the CBOs, the governmental meetings, and outside of the county, because we know when we have people that are coming from CDCR, and it was Michelle who was asking questions about how to connect people to Medi-Cal, we make sure we know that answer. Because in order to be a forensic social worker, you have to know a little bit about a lot of things. And so we believe that with the growth of our unit, that if we had a program manager, we would continue to do these things, but we would enhance it. I understand that the CAB, you want data. You want to be able to track recidivism. We want to know how many people did recidivate. We want to know where did we miss those gaps. Our program manager would have the opportunity to do those things, right? Because right now we are working hard, but we want to be efficient and effective. I think that if you look at other public defender offices within our Bay Area 9, you're not gonna find a team like this. And you're also not gonna find a public defender's office that is so embedded to other community resources. So I know I probably talked more than 5 minutes because I get that, you know.
I'm sorry, you had me intrigued. I was pulled in. I'm just like.
I'm sure you have questions. We kind of went off base from our. Thank you, Gary.
It's okay. I love all
Let me just,
the
sorry, just close this out by actually letting you know what our request.
Okay.
Funding. Our request is a one-time funding request of $970,000, and that's to cover 5 years of funding for this position. When we made the original request, it was for $182,897 with the presumption that that would be year-over-year funding. We now understand that with this request, this would be one-time funding to cover the initial 5 years to launch this position, with the understanding that we're going to be able to show through efficacy and through outcomes and through showing that we're going to be abiding by the central provisions of AB 109, that this will lead to sustainable funding.
Or you answered one of my questions. So thank you for that. Is there anything additional that you guys want to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to committee questions. You actually I have the same question for all of you on how this one-time funding will be used and your goal. So just any event just say was funded for those 5 years. I'm still going to ask the same question. What is your goal to sustain it after that 5 years to ensure that position?
Yeah, and I think that's an important question. That's a central question. We think that what Angeline has talked about when we show that all of the outcomes associated with bringing together kind of these positions within their office, that really is going to demonstrate the outcomes that everybody in the meetings that see, and there will be able to achieve sustainable funding going forward beyond that 5-year period.
Yeah. Your excitement.
Right.
No, it's great. I appreciate your energy and this work. You can feel it. In your original budget, you have a line item for the 3 unit managers, and this is an additional manager. The way I'm hearing it from you is that you're trying to create a position that is kind of bridging all of these coworkers together.
Correct.
But then it's still an individual who's on the same job title line. Can you just give a little clarity to that?
Ariana, there is a chart. It's like toward the very beginning. It's got a black background.
This one?
That's the guy. When you look at that chart, right here.
They don't have a page number on it, Garyana, for me to direct you.
68.
I'm like, I don't know which is.
68.
Is this what you're referring to? What do you see?
Where this role falls in, yeah.
Okay, so the program service manager, right there in the middle. We have our AODS specialist services. That person is, when we talk about that particular individual, that position, that person, what she does is she picks people up and drops them off at programs. So that's not all that she does. That's a very small piece. She's instrumental with coordinating the sheriff's office, AODS programs, and ensuring that people have the treatment that they need. So the AODS, that's a program in itself. We have our mental health version. That is a social worker that is connected with an attorney, and they are in court a couple of times a week, and they have interns that help support that. So the program service manager, ideally, those would go ahead and report directly to that person. Underneath that, we have an adult forensic social worker, that is who I am. And then we have a juvenile forensic social worker. Both of them are, well, licensed, and they do casework. So I still do direct services work, so it is a forensic social worker and juvenile. The forensic social worker and juvenile will continue to see our MSW program. All of the social workers in our office, the social workers are all graduate level social workers, but we also have a graduate level program where we have probably somewhere between 3 to 5 to 6 MSW students from local universities. And so they are instrumental in the work that they do. However, it takes an amazing amount of time and coaching. And so the juvenile social worker will take that on. We also have a program called, it's almost similar to our HIP program, but it's with you. So as you come in and before they get charged, we can go out and we're at the schools, we're at their homes. We're doing things to prevent them from getting up at the hall. The adult forensic social worker manages KB 109 social worker, the alternative supervision program. The very bottom, and I don't know why it's bottom. I'm not going to we have a HIP program. Look, it's pretty rudimentary. This is what I do. It's the HIP program. And so the HIP program is a program that consists of 4 individuals who are managing that prison. So we're hoping that our program manager will be able to go ahead and coach, train, ensure that they have all of the onboarding they need. We're all having the same consistent message, and we're all being managed by someone that is a forensic and clinical individual.
And so there's,
sorry.
I was just gonna add on to what you asked. So what does that look like now?
Yeah,
How, what is everybody connected to now?
So right now,
I'll take it.
okay. It's a bit spread out.
Okay.
Right? And so what you do is you have, it's working, but it's not working effectively. It's working, it's not being, it could be so much more efficient. So when I say we served 800 people, I'm saying that we can ensure that we're gathering data, that we're doing the things we need to do, and that those people who are doing all of this important work are getting all the support that they need. Because this is forensic social work, right? They are different in the way that we support our attorneys. There's a different lens, and what forensic social work is the meeting of those two lenses. And that's why we have the reduction of the FTAs in HIP. That's why we're able to go ahead and connect folks to treatment with mental health diversion. That is why we're able to create alternative plans. This morning at 6:32, someone emailed me at 6:32 in the morning. It's never anything. And I haven't gotten my classes in a week, so I read it. And it was a client that worked in jail who was being very successful in a jail program. And he emailed and said, I'm having addiction problems, I'm relapsed, and I don't know what to do. And I haven't talked to him in 1 month. I was able to go ahead and contact AODS. I'm so sorry. I was able to contact the folks from AODS, communicate with that individual, and get them connected with everything. That is the kind of thing that we can do. That's this morning, I got a call. There was someone who back and forth, and then they're like, I need to get to court. I was able to reach directly out to our social worker of the day, which is something we've been able to institute because we have so many social workers, and the social worker of the day was able to respond. Right now, it's diffused ahead. So this position is very much patterned into other divisions, right?
Yeah.
So EHSD, from the family services, they have a division manager. On the medical side of the house, they have a division manager. In probation, they have division managers. So, in health, and I don't know what they're called, but they have managers over programs. And so this is not something that we're just making up on our own. We are looking at the county model that works. About that kind of model, so we can support not only our folks doing the work, but also the clients that we're reaching out to.
Great, thank you for clarification.
Thank you.
I just have a follow-up for Patrice or Gariana on, because this is a 5-year ask. I know in our recommendations, we're not gonna be saying spend this much here and do this. We're just guiding the next steps for the county. But if we could get a little guidance on the length of period of time that funds should be requested to be used for, I think that would be helpful in our conversation next week.
You wrote that question down.
I just verbalized it. Ariana, can you?
It's important.
Go back and find it in the video.
I'm using my resources. Any other questions?
Any other questions from committee members? Keep a disclosure like me.
I actually work in the.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I was waiting till you seen his name. Great work, great work. So so there are no questions from committee members. Are there any questions from anyone inside of the room?
I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to give a shout out to Angeline and her team and just how amazing they are, and how well we all work together between their office and our office, and it really is a awesome relationship. Just want to give you the shout.
And I can't give you a compliment because I how to give disclosure earlier, but so for the sake of time, I want to first say, if there's no more questions, I'm sorry. Are there any questions on Zoom?
No, there's no questions on Zoom.
Okay, so since there are no more questions for the public, okay, so I want to just say thank you to all of our county department agencies for coming here and presenting and taking your time and representing here. I greatly appreciate it, and also answering our additional questions. So this information will help us in our next meeting, our decision on how to move forward with 819 access funds. You are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of our meeting. If not, enjoy your weekend in TGIF. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, so we will now. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Don't offer that too freely.
Right. Okay, so we will now move on to discuss our follow-up questions that we had for the Contra Costa.
You want to wait 30 seconds?
Oh, we are going to just take a quick little 30-second break. Well, we're good on time, so.
You guys are doing great.
Okay, so.
Well, that is an hour behind. You know
It's
that?
still, no.
Oh, it is? You know, I've been.
Two.
Right, but it says 102.
Oh, yeah.
I have my phone here, but so I kept looking up going.
Takes the county 40% longer to.
Catching that because I was sitting there going, shoot, we good on time, man. I'm about to go.
And you go.
Ready to move on? We're good to go?
Sure.
Okay, any break, any bathroom, anybody? Everybody get, okay.
Wow. Grind.
Need to stand up? Okay, because I'm ready to grind through it. All right, so we're gonna move forward because we're doing amazing with time. So now we're gonna go.
Can I ask a quick question before we jump into H3?
Ask me?
No.
Oh,
Group.
oh, sure.
I think the way that they propose their one-time ask feels like it was based on just observation of the way that we're asking questions and having these conversations with other departments. And I don't know if this is something we can do or if we want to open up, but like to make things more equitable, would these other departments have made their ask differently? Have they known it is a one-time fund versus or budget modification?
I'm trying to follow the question. So you're asking if the request would have been different, meaning would it have increased? Because keep in mind, the context in which they made the program modification to begin with was for the next fiscal year. So it would have been a one-year allocation with the assumption that if the program modification would have been approved, then it goes into essentially their baseline, and then, it will move forward, similar process year to year.
Yeah.
So I think it's a safe, a safe assumption, though we can always get clarification that the requests that have been made were based on 1 year costs. Now, we're talking about 15 million as a big lump sum.
Yeah.
So even if you all were to decide, you want to see so much funding be just for, $1 million for bridge housing, let's say. Well, if that gets RFP, that's probably going to be broken down, or they're gonna take that lump sum and decide how much can we stretch this out over time, you know? So, you all can still make the case that way as well for these program modifications, given that what they gave you, particularly for the staffing costs, that's pretty you know,
Right.
with the exception of, you know, they're gonna incur the COLA increases will happen next year, but for the most part, that's a pretty accurate account on a yearly basis of what it's gonna take to fund that. And truthfully, your other presentations from the other priority areas also factor in annual costs too. So it's all sort of in alignment. It's just going to be incumbent upon you all to decide how you want to plan that based on you know, the cost example that you using.
And that's where your money may, I'll come in with the program.
No, I
ideas, and
I
you-
just think it'll be important for us to distinguish between like the ask for medication for $250,000 where the department is stating that they would have opportunities to find funds
Right.
for that in other years versus the two asks for staffing, which one was a 5-year ask,
Right.
while the other was a 1 year,
1 year,
because I don't know if they knew that they could ask for more than 1 year. I'm just flagging that because it felt very different. in the way that they-
Departments know whether or not the CBOs knows.
About whether or not they can.
Those department asks were year over year, because they were from the budget.
Well, I guess the question is, because, one, department they switched to, they came in and they initially asked for 1, and now today is presented with 5. So, I think that's the question, right? Did others know that they can do that? And is that something that they could do?
Maybe they can do anything they want.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't know that, I mean.
I mean, I think the parameters.
Oh, okay, okay.
Parameters are pretty clear, and there was
I like that.
conversation even at that last CCP meeting where,
I think.
it's very clear that if they wish to pursue their program modification, there is the 15 million that is available to you. Now, how you plan around that is
Right.
really left up to the department, see whoever's making the request to
Right.
decide, you know?
That was more, it came out of the PPC.
PPC.
Mhm,
The
okay.
PPC, the two supervisors on there are the ones that suggested that they brought back around into this funding. That wasn't the original plan.
So there you go.
All right, did that answer your question?
And I think the benefit of them coming forward to present to you all is that they are able to take into account the questions that you ask, so that that way there's some feedback,
Right,
you know, to their actual modification. So, and I think it became clear, I think that's why, the public defender's office came with that. They heard
Yeah.
the level of intentionality that you all are having when it comes to funding certain areas.
Right.
And so they're thinking that they should also be intentional about how they're gonna plan around this.
Right.
So I don't think it's necessarily something where it needs to be broadly stated. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of, my view, intuitive if the direction for departments were to come to the cab and have a conversation about how their modification fits within the priority.
Right.
Well said.
okay.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Ready to
Thank
move
you.
forward?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move forward now to our next part, which is, sorry, I got lost with our stuff. Which is for the Health, Housing and Homeless Service Division. We had some, they came to initially our very first workshop, which was in December for housing, and we had some follow-up questions. So we're going to take a moment to review those questions. And so we do have some of the questions in the agenda, and then there were some additional questions I submitted after the fact.
Oh,
Yeah, so those were sent out, for us. If you, I don't know if you all had a chance to read those.
the ones that are in
There's
this.
some in there, and then we received, the
Yeah.
information later on.
So,
Oh, I don't
the questions that were,
Gary,
available for you, were the follow-up questions that you guys have around the shelter beds. And then there were some specific
Mhm.
follow-up questions on 4
Yes,
that was sent to us a little later. And we sent it over to them, so then their responses came back a little later, and the timeline for seeing on here, so.
can we get copies of this?
Right off.
I appreciate, I brought a copy. So I submitted questions on top of what you had, because one of the things that we were focusing on was about court, reentry court team, right?
Yeah,
So I wanted to dig a little deeper to get information about their current court team. What does that look like? So I asked a whole bunch of questions
awesome.
on top of your shelter questions. And they did respond. I like their response. Well, not like, but I read through their responses and they did answer the, the questions. So, I like that they speak to say. I guess for me, I just gotta prepare myself, and I thank you for asking that question about that assistance of that's sort of how we're gonna do this.
And I think going way back, Jill, your insight here might be helpful. You had framed this approach as not like delegating a dollar amount, but making more recommendations on funding. And I think if that still holds true, Nicole,
Correct.
that makes our job a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's the part I'm excited about.
I think trying to stay a little zoomed out is gonna allow us to kind of have that
Correct.
whole dialogue in there.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
okay.
That takes a little bit off of us just focusing on that.
Yeah, and it makes it less personal. It's not
Right.
like I'm deciding this department gets this. It's,
Right.
yeah,
You know, you don't have that authority anyway.
Right.
Right.
Board of Supervisors are.
They're gonna make that decision at the end,
Yeah.
so it's just us.
no,
I don't.
I don't want to be the bad guy.
Thank you.
I don't think you wouldn't wanna do the math first anyway and find out that you're talking about 12 million bucks and going like, wow, that's only 12 million bucks out of 15.
Yeah,
But if you add up all the asks, it's far more than the.
Okay.
It is.
way
It's
more,
than
yeah.
the 15.
Okay.
Calculation has been done. So I guess
Oh, I
another.
did read through this. This was weird. So it showed all of, is this their edit?
Yeah, just try to read through the edits, just try to read. I think they were just trying to get it over to us because,
Got it.
my fault,
You're
We have all
good.
the questions together.
You're
yeah,
So we're sending them like 2 batches of questions, and they're like, oh geez. So.
so for the sake of it, I had an aha moment, literally an aha moment driving home. And I'm like, hey, yes, it's you.
But they were trying to play their best.
Are right on
We're
time.
right on time. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. What page is that on the agenda?
71.
On page 71, so we'll first start off with, these questions. Go and see if I had. So these are follow-up to the questions that you had. When I read this, I know I have more questions to the questions. I'll be completely honest. I know they uplifted some issues on there, challenges to fully maximize the beds due to transit nature of reentry community when beds are, it's one of them bullets on there. So then that just brought more questions up to me. I know that we can't get those answers, but just data like how many, have not, how many, I'm sorry, I said question there, any data that shows who or why due to no like, so if they had a bed, how many did not report because they didn't have any transportation there, are unable to get to the shelter? So that goes back to kind of like what we talked about today. So then my question was, well, how was that person referred, right? So if they couldn't make it to that shelter bed, where did that referral come from? And then could that referring agency question get them there? So it just brought up additional questions to me for there. Like, what is there any communication or coordination for individuals? And just from my own personal experience outside of the job, just working with them, I know that there is coordination, so I was looking for that within the question. And some of our providers did bring that up. So some providers do work with them and coordinate. So I guess that was that question for me. Because they're noticing the lack of the transportation. Another question I had was, since they're indicating lack of transportation, would that increase the core assistance, and with those that are currently in cut? What should I say? The point made about the population. I like the point they did make, because that is completely honest, just with my own experience about the population not staying at the shelter due to risk requirements and their structure and restraints. I mean, that's one of the key things that we talk about with housing. Housing is a very big issue. And it's very difficult, I'll be completely honest, to even get someone to go to a shelter. So that was a very good point that I found in there. And then I noted, question, are there any additional levels of support from the shelter level that can help them with this? I know that the shelters have their staff there, just like CORE does, but do they have someone that's solely focused on reentry? So one of the things that stuck out to me, just with my history within Contra Costa County and someone going to a shelter, there's that dislink between, and we know that between the shelters in H3 and then the reentry parts. They're not tapped into our world, right? In our services. So how are they getting them connected? Like when they go to the shelter and they meet with someone, what does those services look like? Are they tapped into their reentry providers? Well, what does that whole circle look like? Because I know from a shelter perspective, it's mostly focused on homeless, because that's the motto of H3, homeless. If I'm saying it right, just homeless in a nutshell.
General homeless.
General homeless. Thank you. My brain's going by.
I think we all could use some coffee.
Yes. I do like that they've added the new expansion of sending bed information to probation and partners. And they did note an increase in referrals, but then that kind of goes back to when they're saying that the people are not making it. So although the referrals were increasing, how many of those increased referrals actually made it to the shelter bed? And one question I've always had when it comes to the shelter beds and AB 109, because the beds are open a lot, is are those beds, can they be used for different tiers if they're not filled, and what that looks like? If it's just short term, right? So what does that look like? And then my last question was, how many shelter drivers do they actually have? Because they mentioned they had shelter drivers. So I don't know if that's different than a core driver or a shelter driver. Yeah, with that part, yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly, and I should have said emergency shelter beds, but they're contracted, I believe it was for 20 beds, 10 beds in 2 different facilities.
Is that right? Is it 20?
Yeah, but not contractors.
Sorry.
From the allocation that they received.
Thank you.
To have those bases.
Thank you for the clarification. And this is saying that 3 beds per night are being utilized. And so we're showing a 15% utilization rate of emergency beds for this population.
Pretty much. They've always struggled to have, they started with just simply those who are on 8109 probation. And they've always struggled with having those individuals placed in the shelter beds. I know at one point there was conversation about expanding it, expanding the eligibility to those that were general supervision, and or anyone that's being that's utilizing the reentry services, mainly from the service hubs.
Right.
I don't know if that has since changed, but if my understanding is that if this email is going out requesting for, I'm guessing it's going out to more than just the reentry network in the center and probation.
Right.
So I think by default, they're expanding to
Right.
ensure that whomever is in the reentry community accessing resources that they have available.
And I mean, I can't, is it okay if I speak to that?
Yeah.
So that it is, I do receive that particular email, and they did add the additions to it. So as they have the AB 109 separate and then general population separate. And it does go, so it does go out to everyone, but then it brings back that question of getting someone transported to there. So the beds are available. It's just how do they get to that bed? Or like you said, I really appreciate them putting that in there, because although you get someone there, they very hard to keep someone in the shelter bed. So what can we recommend to help with that? Because the last thing someone wants to do, unfortunately, even if they're homeless, they're rather go sleep in the park.
Yeah.
They do not want to go to a shelter bed, that even though that bed is there, you just can't get them to go.
So why are we funding it then?
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that I guess we can call it legacy now. We've been in this maybe online space for a long time. I just think it's just been a continuous, resource that's just been funded to make available emergency shelter.
Right.
Should the individual need it.
Because I think it's important to have, I mean, yes, it's hard to get someone to go there, but I think maybe not as much, but I think it's important to have it there because some will go. It may not be a high percentage, but having those beds allocated just in case is important.
I think where I'm challenged is like, when we heard H3 speak, they had talked about this approach of, I think it was 124 or something, of like the number of beds, is that right? Available at each stage. And if they're the entity within the county that we're relying on to provide this resource, and they're not being successful at it, like, one, is the resource really needed? Or is there someone else that needs to be providing this resource? Because if they've been doing this for the past 20 years and they have a rate of 50, if I do 15% of my job, like that's not a good representation. And you can give excuses. You're blue in the face, but like,
Right.
that's just hard for me to swallow.
Yeah.
I think it's best to kind of see it within the full context of what, of all housing resources that are made available to this particular population.
Okay.
As was stated, often the clients don't necessarily want to, I'll say prior to, I think I haven't been since this newer model where I think they have it set up now, it's not as much congregate like living. In the past, it had been. And I believe they're wet shelters at the top of that. So you would have individuals who are either, one of two situations are happening. They're either newly released into the community or they're already in the community, couch surfing or what have you. Do they need an emergency landing? Yes, but if my only option as a mutual participant would be an SLE, and if I don't have a substance use issue, there's that, or emergency shelter, which if I better sleeping on the couch at my friend's house, I will, you know. But when H3, if you ever attend some of the like their council on homeless meetings, they look at this in terms of a full scale continuum, and that emergency shelter or emergency housing is always a key component of that entire continuum. So it is it's supposed to be utilized for those really dire situations, and not saying that a lot of these individuals aren't in dire situations. They will pick and choose though.
Yeah.
What is most beneficial for them. So I'm more hesitant to say, oh, this is unsuccessful just based on those raw numbers when you take into account the full context of what it takes to deliver housing resources for a very, complex group of population, So, in a lot of cases, I would not be surprised because oftentimes the shelters can be full, but yet only AB 109, the AB 109 beds, where they're counting is only like maybe 3 here, 4 there, or what have you, which goes to show me that the shelters are necessary, right? They're serving a purpose. It's just so happens that the specified population that we're looking at don't always utilize that as a resource, but it doesn't mean it's not needed. It's just.
I'll say this because we get on a daily basis, although they submitted that number. Like, for example, the email we got today, there's only one AB 109 bed open. So they're getting used, it just fluctuates. And she said it, and it better. I don't know how to summarize it, but it is a need that needs to be met, that's out there.
So when you think about shelter beds, think about, because you've also got recommendations on bridge house, which I would say is almost like emergency shelter in the interim.
Right, the interim housing.
You have the shelter where it's really just by the night, right? And then you have the interim, which might be, is a little bit longer, but it's not as sustainable, right? But it's just to hold you over. And then you have other more like transitional, real program oriented housing that not just simply about, oh, here's a bed you bump into, but there's programming happening to support you and your behavioral change or whatever the case may be, that then plans for moving you toward a more sustainable approach. So I think that's why it's being highlighted so broadly everywhere. I feel like we've heard it from several different groups at this point, that bridge housing is so necessary because that's the kind of gap filler in the continuum that's out there. And then, you know, eventually, hopefully, we'll see an increase in supportive housing programs as well. So for any of folks who have had experience with the justice system, we saw this a lot with our NEED program many years ago, where those who were repeatedly arrested by local police and on-site release, public nuisance, misdemeanor level type of stuff, where individuals with acute mental illnesses, they're not going to be able to live independently for, if ever, but certainly for a very long time. So we would need those supportive housing options for that population as well. That's a different kind of justice impacted group compared to those that might be on probation, let's say, you know. So it's a continuum, and you have to think about every slice of the pathway, if you will, about what's really needed to support folks as they kind of go through different stages of their reentry or reintegration process. Yeah, no problem.
Any other additional questions from the?
Kind of processing.
We gotta remember that, well, I appreciate you focusing on the shelter bed, but if we go back, I don't think the recommendations from their initial presentation was around that.
Emergency.
Right.
It was.
It wasn't, so.
But what I'm hearing from providers is that there isn't this resource,
What resource?
emergency bed, like a bed that night.
There are beds available. The issue is getting that person to the bed. So there are beds.
Yeah.
There are beds at the shelter. So there's several issues, which is not a fault to court, not shelter. Meaning the bed is there, team is there. It's a person wanting to be there. I myself have secured beds and the person they say they want to go.
Yeah.
If transportation is not there to take them there, they won't go. Or even if someone transports them, once they get there, they won't.
Yeah.
So it's not the program itself, it's the individual. So how do we change that mind state? And that's one of the things that myself are trying to focus on, getting people to look at shelter like different. There's a stigma against shelter, especially with men or women with family, is I shouldn't be in a shelter. So not only, I heard people talking about change people's mind state and cognitive behavior therapy and thinking, well, that's one way to think about it too, is how do we change their mind state of, you're coming out of a criminal system. This may not be ideal for you, but what I tell folks, going into a shelter opens up a whole lot of other doors because you get assessed. Not only do you get assessed, you're now inside of their HMIS system, which opens you up to a slew of other housing that does not fall under our reentry categories at all.
Yeah.
And they have a monthly meeting to observe that. So if you have someone with mental health and AOD, or whatever the case may be, SSI, once they do that, we ask for that. And I don't know the acronym in the top of my head right now.
Thanks for that.
We ask for that. We ask for that, I try to convince people, and you want to just go, even if it's for a week and you find something else to do. You need to go to get that assessment done so that you can have access to all the other housing in the county. So I think it's more of a educational thing and working on folks to understand, like, you won't look down upon because you're in the shelter bed. Also, maybe it's how they changed the way it looks. At one point it was like just everyone on a cot. Right. I remember someone from Berkeley came and presented to Contra Costa County when I worked at Shelter Inc. on how the shelter should be structured to where individuals have more of a, I don't know if it ever was done, but like.
It was.
Oh, thank you, I'm so happy. So, yes, so it's, it's making them feel more comfortable. So I think it's more of a deeper dive into the why they don't want to go. And then that transportation is really important.
And if this is really a passion of yours, Justin, I encourage you to tour the shelters. Just to take a look.
And come on, you can go on Zoom, the Council of Homeless meeting. Come on, listen to it. It's 2 hours.
participated in that one.
Yeah, I'm on the board, 2 hours. All these questions that you're asking, they would enjoy those.
I don't know if they would enjoy my
No, they
question.
actually they would, because those are the things they want to know, especially from the reentry lens. So those are, really, they are. They're questions that they would probably want to hear, so that's a good space to do it. But those are very good questions. But that's, from my own personal experience in this field for these years, that's what I've run into. It's not more of that, it's not working, is educating the people. And one of my biggest hiccups were making sure that is understanding, yes, someone is homeless, but what is also the need of someone that's reentry? What is the need of that person? Are the services coming there to help them? Are the people that's there know how to help these individuals? Are they, because remember, I think it's not an option if they want to say that they've been Justin impacted. So if they're not getting referred by one of our CBOs and someone goes to this, how would they know, right? So I don't know, it's a whole lot of things, but I think it's something to uplift and look into.
But to further add, I think utilization is not always, utilization rates and numbers alone is not necessarily a key indicator of whether or not that's because especially when this is really all left to the discretion of the individual.
Nicole,
Yeah.
Michelle
see that.
Michelle has her
Thank
hand
you.
raised.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. I just wanted to chime in on the shelters, the temporary shelters that just some of the experiences that I heard with my conversation with Tiffany over at RSC. One of the things that she shared about the reservations with staying at the shelters is the politics that goes on there, and the culture can be triggering to create another problem, another criminal offense, potentially an assault, because there's fighting that goes on in the shelters. And the other thing is, if they have an animal that's become like a companion, like a friend, they would lose their dog. They would have to give it away or hope that someone can take care of it. And that was really, that really stood out for me, because a lot of times the dog has become that individual's best friend, and they would rather sleep out in the cold and stay with the dog. And I thought,
I don't think she can hear you. Can you hear them, Michelle?
Not the county shelter. We have animal facilities that have now been added, have been closed for the last couple of years. So
oh,
not
that's
an issue.
incredible. I didn't know that. And perhaps they weren't aware of it at the RSC. So that's really good to know that they would be able to get their animals after their stay. Well, one of the things that she did say is, for the coaches or the housing navigators or the mentors, is really problem solving that before the release, and having the conversation that this is highly likely that your alternative initially will be to stay at a shelter, and how they can problem solve around that not a matter of if the nonsense comes up, but when it comes up, how would you handle it? Because the likelihood of the troubles on the street are a lot higher than the troubles that they would possibly encounter in a shelter. So it was just a very interesting and illuminating conversation. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Are there any other questions regarding the filter? Okay.
And Patrice, you may know that I think H2 was talking about developing a core team for inside out. Is that right? Is it for inside out? Yeah, inside and.
Oh, for the, I don't think that, maybe that's part of their, because their, program modification request was for 14.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was.
Because that might also help when you're talking more handoffs and
Transmit.
you certainly may answer
Thank
that.
you.
Share.
So, yes, yeah, so I will give kudos to, the core team because they are trying to do this with the small team that they have. So, if you do contact them, they will come, they are cleared. They will actually come into, the jails and do, that assessment. And then
Oh, nice.
sheriffs to transfer, we've had about 3 or 4 successful individuals get transported to shelter. So I hear a lot of folks saying it's not there. It goes back to, and I'm sorry, that's why I was looking at you. It goes back to the partners communicating with each other. That's not what it takes.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, so it's just, and that's why I'm really uplifting for people to kind of step outside their bubble and join these other community calls because there's big capital. So of course, they have a very
That
small amount.
is the way to get into housing in Contra Costa County.
I
Through those core teams
Yes,
and through the ISPDAT and through H3. That is the
Correct.
primary way into permanent supportive housing.
that is absolutely correct.
So the more we can push that.
So it's just getting back to your question in reference to some of the information that we've heard. It's just expanding that process and that step, for why I don't know, everyone has access to the core team, they email out, it's just working with them to be able to come in with their to do that. So I know they have an ask, it just would be helpful. I understand the ask, because they do come in, but it's small.
Does H3 know that there's this cohort that they could possibly come and educate?
Well, I find that some didn't know and some do know, so I don't know where that dislink is.
Well, I mean, is there an internal group of these providers or is
That
there?
come in, or what do you mean, for?
Yeah,
or-
so is there any sort of, like a provider, like
A coordinating group.
like
in the
like
sheriff's office?
ORJ does a gathering of all your providers, right?
Partisan
Is
provider.
there
So I know
any?
Jody, Jody does, huh? Yeah, Jody just started doing that and, we have a, quarterly meeting. Our next one is in April. And so I have now reached out to invite core to the H3.
Yeah.
And so all of the people that are not at the table, because normally who's at the table is us, our CBOs, and that's what I'm hoping to change.
Okay.
It needs to get expanded.
Good.
So now we've invited. So core is supposed to be coming to that meeting. So I thought it was important for them to sit there so people can say, here's a person, here's a face.
How do we?
We're here, and so the process is simple. You just email the manager the information with a release date, and then they come and do an assessment and they pick them up.
Yeah.
The only issue, not issue, the only, conflict that hope that can probably be tightened up is the not knowing the release time. So some of the things that men and women of purpose express, you can't get around that
No.
at all. And because people, we all know, they go to work, just get one
Exactly.
release. So that's the only pickup, is you can tell someone that they will be released at 12, and all of a sudden they are released at 8:30. And what do? So you got. this
Why
filter
does that
there.
happen?
Because they might go into court, like a lot of people, a good percentage of our population are awaiting their sentencing, and so they may go and charges may be dropped. They could just be, time served. And so they process the paperwork and then they get released.
How are they getting released at like 1 o'clock in the morning?
Because the minute the court says they have to be released, the sheriff cannot hold them a minute longer than the court says they can.
Could the 1 o'clock ones be like maybe someone is doing a post? That's kind
Well,
of.
so you think about
It's the
it,
jail's discretion.
Really?
It's that day.
well, but because I've been through this with them, so the court it could be an afternoon court. And by the time they get back and they do all the paperwork and all of that, if they have to be released, that's the
59.
next day,
Yeah.
that next day starts at 12:01. If they're not willing to stay till 8 in the morning, the sheriff has to release them. They can't hold them a minute longer than their release date. So that's why that happens. And so it's the person that says, no, I want out now. Because I know that there was many years ago, a whole discussion about FOAC morning, and there was a lot of work with that. There was a lot of changes. I don't know if that it's slid back to that.
I think, what I understand is newer is that they will hold them, like said, if the person is willing to wait. Especially if there's some, resources waiting for them. That's new. That didn't always happen. They could just get released.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did, and I'm so excited that you're bringing this to me.
Yeah, I would love for it to get it, you know, I don't know if, why everyone don't know about it, but it's there. From what I understand, they've already been connected to Jody and cleared, so.
You know, I've noticed that it's so important to over communicate.
Yes, ma'am.
Because folks go,
I'm
no,
gonna
really.
remember you said that the next time I send you an email.
Communicate. Because, and the reason why I say is folks go in and they just do their job, you know, and they come, you know, they're just kind of focused in. It's not always thought of, oh, we should share this out. You're helping bring them.
I don't over communicate. My grandma always say, just ask. The most someone can tell you is no. So I am a true believer. I would send an email quickly and go, can you? Come on down. Were there any questions in reference to, I know it came across this way, but I did try to filter through it a little bit.
Yeah.
I was excited about the shelter team wanting to present at CAB, so I highlighted that after we get done with all this stuff, something to bring to full CAB, I think would be great. And we have all those open seats, right? So it'd be great to. That's somewhere we can send a flyer. Yeah, a lot of the core team and shelter members, they are.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because they're asking to come present at CAB, so we have all these open seats, why not?
Seats.
I think that was all I had. I mean, I just really wanted this data to help us with our next meeting as we go through our recommendations, because one of the asks was to expand a reentry core team. So before we get to that discussion, I wanted to break down information about, you know, what does their current staff look like? And I just have more questions around what the current,
You know when, this isn't in here and you probably don't know, but when the core team program for people in detention centers originated or started? Like, is this a newer program?
It started right before the pandemic, and then because of the pandemic, it kind of fell apart.
And now it's getting back.
I think so. Is that right?
I don't know. Yeah, I think, but yeah, I'll go.
We're starting to try that, along with the transportation with the West County Reentry Center.
Yeah.
All of that.
A lot of stuff that was getting ready to kick off, then COVID happened. And once that happened, especially any of the engagement work with in the jail, it's just kind of.
Well, because you have to realize that COVID hasn't stopped.
right.
That too.
And so they have shutdowns and they have, outbreaks, and so it's been a slow.
I still love the idea of ending that or like creating more resources there, because I think it addresses some of the conversation we were having about the creating and supporting that individual.
No, and I think it's important because the core team is amazing. However, they don't just focus on our population. They
But if
focus
they can
on,
get a team.
right,
that's doing
and just, it will, in my opinion, help. I'm really big on us, I'm having, wherever it is, a pocket of someone focusing on the just impacted population.
Yeah.
There should always be someone sitting somewhere, doing that and knowing how to help and connect them to services. So that they, you know, can get the assistance that they need. And I only speak of that as being case management a long time ago with that wonderful Bridges of Work program. They were talking about and having to help people from the shelter and different things like that. So I think for me, it's really how do we connect more with the community programs to be able to help our population. So, any questions?
No, but it's a time check, about 15.
Okay, so that's, is there any other questions around Michelle, do you still have a question? Because your hand is up. I take that as a no.
Their arm's gonna get tired.
So we will go ahead and move forward since we've covered everything. So our next item is the schedule of future 8109 access funding planning meeting. So we have another, sorry, on page 73 and 74, attachment number 5 is a copy of our planning meeting. So our next meeting is on the 22nd of March, where we're going to discuss all of our priority key areas and our program modifications, which will be held here. And then we have our Thursday, April 11th meeting, and so is that our goal our goal is to be able to present to them?
So I actually have a couple of updates in regards to this. So your March 22nd, that's your special meeting where you guys will debrief. If there's any materials you want me to.
I was gonna ask you.
Agenda.
So yeah, I was gonna ask, is that gonna be a real thick one, or should we just bring all the stuff that we have already with us? Because I know it has to be in the agenda for us to kind of go.
Yeah, I would recommend that, you let us know what you want to see. In terms of reference documents, because you just got it, we're talking about debriefing all priority areas. You guys got.
That's gonna be a big package.
So,
Are we able to have, I have a binder for this.
now we can't, because everything has been posted, we can't always just pull it up in real time.
Okay, okay,
It
thank you.
doesn't have to be attached to this particular
Okay.
agenda. But if there are some specific pieces that you want to have included, just let us know and we'll do that. I don't know if there's anything that you all wanted to put together, if it's going to be a, an outline or bullet points of which, or whatever the case may be. You'll just need to get that. as quickly as
When do you need it? So we I don't know if you've seen it, we created a folder and we're gonna, since we can't talk because of the Brown Act, and be able to drop in our recommendations that we talked about to kind of bring something together for our next meeting. When would you need that done by?
But the 22nd is next Friday. So, and because this is a special meeting, we don't have to post within that 4-day period. It's 24 hours in advance. So we got 24 hours. So I would say at, let's aim for, today's Friday. Let's aim for Tuesday, end of the day Tuesday. If you need Wednesday morning, we can give you Wednesday morning. Aim for Tuesday.
I mean, I would probably say for the sake of time, like what we're putting together is just our notes for us to be able to talk.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
It
be
doesn't-
super.
Yes.
Yeah, don't put yourself.
We don't have to actually put that in there.
So if we're able to work on a joint document in live time in this space, correct, Patrice?
You can do that.
Okay, so
Can do.
if you're comfortable, you can take our previous recommendations, remove most of the language, but leave headings,
Right.
which will allow us then, when we're in this space, to kind of walk through those and add language based on all of this information that we've received.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree to
Okay.
that last week.
Okay, good.
I mean, whenever we've seen each other last.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I just didn't want to, it's such a short time window. I don't want to say, oh my God, we got to all have it done by Tuesday.
No, we won't have.
Right, so I'm just saying, I don't think that we have to have that in the agenda. It can
got
just be, I just make it done enough for us to have by Friday so that we have talking points that we can get in and get out.
So here's something else to consider in your timeline. Your March 22nd is where you can start to really define, not necessarily language wise, define what your recommendations will be.
Yeah.
Right? That could be your
Right.
bullet points, right? And then for your April 11th general body meeting, this is you reporting out to the general body. We can even make this an action item where they say, yes, we approve for you guys to go forward with these recommendations, and you'll lean on cabin policy to fill out the verbiage, the
Right.
language, okay? And then you come back to your regularly scheduled meeting, April 19th, and that might be the framework where you want to start, you either at that meeting have a formal document ready to go, or something that's close to a formal proposal as possible. I'll just say that. Here's the other piece. I did check in with the CAO's office. They are looking to hold the CCP because they saw your planning schedule. They're looking to schedule a CCP meeting on April 29th.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that gives you, that
Okay.
still gives you a little bit more time. Now, your final formal document won't be reviewed by the full CAB in time, but that's okay. If CAB, generally speaking, the full body, generally speaking, is in agreement with the recommendation that you want to move forward, you're just adding, like I said, the language to expound
Right.
on it, then I think you're great to go.
Okay.
I know there was a question you had, Justin, about the program modifications, and if, we need to have those answers ready to go for the budget, hearings. I checked in with the CAO's office on that one. They said that they are willing to wait until CAB has its full recommendations. That's what we're speaking.
So that's to April?
Yes.
Oh,
22nd and 23rd of the Board of Supervisors
Board of
budget hearings,
Yeah,
and so you're not gonna make it in time for that.
yeah. So they're willing to wait to the CCP meeting.
I think I'm confused.
The budget hearings, they hear from all the different departments of the Board of Supervisors on the current asks on their budgets, just like the CCP does. And then, the board will give direction, and then the board budget isn't finalized till May. So there's that in-between time. So what they're saying is, normally this budget doesn't go to the Board of Supervisors directly. It's folded into the budget document.
Got it.
So it would just be folded in before the final budget is adopted.
Got it.
In May. So you have some time. You don't.
I think I was blending this with the department ask, their modification ask, but this is
Well,
response
no, that
to-
was right. You were right, because the initial, your question was, well, if the budget hearings are April 22nd, and what have you, and if the AB 109 budget is gonna be just folded in, where your decisions lie, or is there a certain deadline you have to operate on with the program modification, having that context in mind. So I asked the AO that question, and they said, no, they were willing to wait on the departments, but program modifications, it doesn't need to be included in the general county budgeting process for the budget hearings, basically. So yes.
So if we were to say no to all three of these budget modifications, they still could in theory be included in the county's budget.
I don't know about that. Well, that would have to be conversation
That would
between
be
them and.
Okay.
Boards.
No, they couldn't include an ask of this pot of funds in their budget request.
Yes, that's even better.
They certainly can submit a budget request to the Board of Supervisors to fund a program,
Yeah.
but not using this pot of funds.
Right, got it.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
that's why you my money guy. I heard that, but it went like, whoo.
Yeah, this is the protected pot of funds.
Yeah. And at the last PPC meeting, I think Supervisor Joya made it pretty clear, because I think that was a question that came up for District Attorney's Office, that if in the event, forgive me, I can't recall how she stated the question specifically, but basically, is there going to be a separate process? And, it's long and short of it, that will be determined after this, that there still can be, that it's not open and closed on their modifications, basically. If you guys decided what you decide, and it may or may not include those modifications, it doesn't mean that that's just a closed door. It would be a
Right.
closed form
Here.
on the 15 million.
Right.
not
Got
total.
it. Cool.
Not on the whole, AB 109 budget.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they could still push for that. They
Right.
could say, we want that out of the.
We need
year
it.
over year over year.
Right.
Mhm.
And then blow up the budget.
Okay,
So I think that's,
so we don't have to schedule anything else. We're good.
we're
No,
good.
all the scheduling is done.
All scheduling is
With
done.
the exception of, what's not on here is the April 29th. So we're gonna get a notice that will be sent out.
And that's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday and it's a different time.
Yeah, so, but it will be here in this room.
April
It'll
29th,
be April 29th.
and we're just pending the time.
It's, still for, yes, that's right.
Are we supposed to be in attendance?
I would. You
We
probably
can't,
should.
right?
Probably, you don't have to be in attendance, in person, you can zoom in.
If we have quorum, would that be a violation of the route?
Not in terms of
No, this is
form
the
of the full
CCP.
body.
Our subcommittee?
I think you'll be fine. Yeah, I think you'll be fine. Because there'll likely be other CAB members that would be in attendance as well. So the concern would be over whether or not it'll be quorum of the entire body. So just don't sit together. Yeah.
Is that what it
Be in
means?
different.
Yeah,
Zoom
don't sit together.
bubbles.
Yeah. Form of the body shouldn't sit together.
We said what? I'm sorry, the date?
April 29th, at 10:30.
10:30 to,
Well, they'll aim for 10:30 to 12. Been pretty good. I'll finish on time. Yes. If it goes over.
All right, so we're done with that. So then I guess the discussion of next steps, as we just talked about, so we will work getting information. I'll look at it on Monday.
Yeah, of course.
So-
We're looking at-
Go ahead.
we jump off, the PPC's been canceled for April 1st.
Yes.
It's been rescheduled.
Okay.
Same time on April 25th.
April 25th at 9:30 to 10:30.
there's not gonna be much to look at. Nicole.
Oh, no, I know, I'm just saying I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not logging in to anything. I'm going until Monday. Yeah, I'm not.
Or decompress.
That's my whole plan for the weekend. I'm just telling you that I will spend time during the week to go, like what you just said, is make the headers. And then it's us just taking from what's already written and dropping it in. Yeah, not about this.
Right.
I just wanted to make that clear. So that's pretty much our next steps, is just getting our stuff prepared for,
Next week.
for next week. Were you able to, look into the innovation funds for everyone on it?
I haven't read yet.
Okay. So that's all that we have. So we will, is there any questions on Zoom? I don't see any. I just want to thank the people on Zoom that stayed for the whole entire meeting. Sending a heart your way, so thank you very much. If there are no questions, we are okay to adjourn to our next Policy and Budget Subcommittee on March 22nd from 1 to 3. Thank you, everyone. Happy Friday and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Garyana.